350 pounds as a cat, and cats are pointless.
Exactly. You know, these are the conclusions that we need to be making from PAFE.
Oh, here we go. Okay, it says we're live.
Hi guys.
It's yellow. Why is it yellow? Shouldn't it be green?
It generally just does that. It fluctuates between yellow and green.
It's weird. Huh.
The stream has not yet went live on the channel, but there's probably a minute delay, so I wouldn't worry about it too much.
That is true. Do you want to try pulling it up on your phone and seeing how the audio is?
Yep, I shall do that now.
Do that as well.
Slice, I have one request.
Yes.
Could you switch the image that you have with the one that I sent you there a second ago?
That one should be the stream thumbnail.
You know the one that says objective morality above the war that's going on?
Yeah, like...
Did I not send it to you a second ago?
No, you did, but I put that as the stream thumbnail.
And then is there not one below that as well?
What?
You sent images.
You sent me 2 images.
Yeah.
The other one with the text on it is the stream thumbnail. So I put that.
The second one has objective morality in white above the lads.
What? I'm so confused. What?
We're confused.
So, like, when we go into our DMs, the first one that you sent, the one on top, that says PAFE discussions. Oh, this. Wait. Oh, you redid it. Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that. I'm stupid.
Apologies. My fault.
Okay, just a sec.
That's okay. I'm gonna check the audio levels for the stream.
It says PAFE discussion. Oh, this. Oh, you redid it. Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that. I'm stupid. Okay, just a second.
Yeah, the audio levels seem perfectly fine.
On my phone, it seems like Josh, that you're slightly too low, so let me...
I could move my mic closer to my mouth. Does that fix anything?
Here. Yeah, so that should probably boost them. Okay, I think we are good. Let me just grab that image. Save image preview. And we want to save it as thing 3.
Hey Theo, how's it going?
It's going fine. Just, taking some online quizzes while this is all getting set up.
Nice. What's the quiz you're doing?
It's because I'm a weeb. I'm taking the Nen personality test from the show Hunter x Hunter.
Oh. I thought it was going to be the Disney Princess test.
Which Disney princess am I? Well, I mean, I obviously know. I mean, seriously, I'm a Pocahontas.
Alright.
Is it a race thing?
How's that, Josh?
No, a strong, independent woman.
Strong.
You don't know that.
She likes white men, so she can't be strong or independent.
Fair enough.
I will check the audio here now, Slice.
Alrighty. Whoa, something is loud.
Why am I quiet out of curiosity?
I don't know.
Is it anything to do with my personal levels, or?
I don't know. Keep talking.
Well, I don't really know what it is exactly I could do to change it.
Yeah, I mean, OBS is kind of weird with its audio stuff.
Ben Shapiro does not want to drum in on objective morality.
Oh no.
Hey, bro, what do you want to eat?
The innocent.
A bagel.
So, is everybody ready?
Yes.
I
Okay.
don't know if
so
there's anything I can really do to boost my audio.
no, it's fine. All the audio seems pretty good now.
Okay. So are we ready to go?
I am ready to go.
I am ready to go myself.
Sure. Let's do this.
So,
Hello,
Today-
everyone.
today, I have decided that I wanted to be a bit of a misfit and have an opinion that isn't probably the most popular opinion, I suppose.
Josh is
so-
having an autism here, guys.
I believe it. I believe it. So, to introduce, my name is Josh. With me is
Theo.
oh hi Theo, and
The
I call
small
myself Theo,
slice.
like,
and Small Slice.
Yeah, I'm small and I'm a slice. So,
So the discussion that we shall have today is one regarding objective morality. Now, to clarify, objective morality is the belief that there is a universal determination for what is immoral, what is moral, therefore that there is an objective morality, there is a truth as to what is correct and what is wrong.
One
And
sec. I need to go do something real quickly because my mic is feeding back there, so I'm just gonna grab some headphones.
that is perfectly fine. Caveat, and I'm gonna assume this is perfectly fine with yourself, Slice, and with Theo. I am happy to discuss, for the sake of the argument, the existence of a god. Now, to clarify,
okay. I mean, we don't necessarily have to bring that in because
I'd be happy enough to. Because,
so the only reason that I brought that up is because that's a part of my worldview, and that's kind of like pretty much everything in my life, or at least I try to have everything in my life kind of be centered around that.
which
Because
is perfectly acceptable, I have to add. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have an issue.
yeah, I don't know. It's just like pretty much like everything that I view in life kind of stems from God and who He is. So that's just kind of how I was raised and kind of how I'm figuring out life now that I'm more of an adult and not necessarily just kind of following in my family's like my parents' footsteps.
And
Yeah, I'm kind of
yeah.
trying to figure stuff out for myself. And to me, at least, nothing really, nothing makes sense really to me without
Without
that.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without God. So.
See.
Yeah.
So to clarify, you would be a believer in objective morality, yes?
Yeah. I think that would be
And
because how do I want to word this? Because I believe that God is the ultimate truth. He's the ultimate moral creator. So therefore, everything will either come from him and or be, and like if it's not from him, then it's what's the word?
I suppose you would refer to it as evil, I suppose?
No, not strictly
Or-
speaking. It would be of the world, which basically means like us as humans create things and twist things, and like we're born kind of into what I would call sin. So I don't know. It's all kind of confusing and everything, but
I get what he's saying from a Christian background myself. The idea of what's of the world and what's of God.
Yeah, the idea that there is part of humanity that is living in the flesh and part of humanity that's living in the spirit. The idea being that acts of the flesh are inherently acts of sin, I suppose.
Oh, no, not necessarily. It's
Well,
just that they aren't inherently good either.
But you would say that acts of the spirit are inherently good?
It depends on what you define as acts of the spirit.
Yeah, because like if you're talking acts of like the Holy Spirit, then yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about
Inherently
like
good.
acts of like an evil spirit, so like an evil entity or something, because I know a lot of people don't really kind of believe in like the devil or anything like that, but I believe that if you believe in God, then you kind of have to believe that Satan is real and he is working, through
Even if
the
you
spirit
don't
world.
believe in even if you don't believe in the devil, then like the point you're trying to say also still gets across. It just really depends on what you mean by what is the spirit, what is an evil spirit,
Right.
whether
Yes.
it's not just like like you could just say an evil spirit, even if it's not like an actual entity, is like something that's affecting your own personality, your own morals, the way your way of thinking, all that.
Right. Yeah.
See, if I was to I have like two parts to my argument. One is significantly stronger than the other, I believe. Personally, I come from a background I grew up in a Christian family. I went to church and did all that good stuff. And gradually, as I went to I personally, I'm of the impression that you can't tell me that God is real any more than I can say that God's not real, if you know what I mean.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm of the impression that I can't prove that God is real, but at the same time I can't prove that God's not real, because you can. It's very difficult to prove that something doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the
Well,
sense that.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
Before we like really begin, I think it's important at the beginning of every like conversation like this to establish what we agree on.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there was we'll make some statements under an assumption. Under the assumption that there is a God like described in the Christian sense, like
Yeah.
a absolutely perfect, would you say an objective morality exists?
I would not, but this is what I mean. I have 2 points to my argument. One argument is more of a secular atheistic perspective.
Yeah, that's what I'm more interested in, the secular conversation, but I just
However,
want to establish some agreements first.
I'm actually interested to have the discussion in a Christian sense, in terms of like what I mean is I want to try and if I assume that God is real, I still wouldn't believe that objective morality exists.
All right.
Get me? That might seem a little bit at first whenever I come out with that.
That's
A
what the
lot of people.
conversation's for.
Yeah. So, is there anything else we need to get out of the way in terms of I suppose what I should say is there is ideas that you can have objective morality without a god, in terms of you can have say there's a lot of people that believe in natural law, that believe in that there is like a purpose for certain things, and if you fulfill that purpose, that is inherently good. If you defile or pervert that purpose, it's inherently bad. So just because you have an objective morality, which I don't agree with, but you can have what I would say is objective ethics, I suppose, in terms of there is a baseline for what people would consider to be objective morality, which doesn't always have to consider a god. But for the first part of this discussion, I would like to assume that God is real, just for the basis of the start of this
For that
conversation.
for that portion of the argument. Yeah, that works.
Mhm. So, are we ready to begin?
Yeah.
Slice?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Oh
so
wait,
on.
sorry, just something quick. Kevin just asked in the chat. He just asked. I guess when we were talking about like the sin and stuff, like he asked if it was original sin. I don't exactly know what he means by that. But I would
I believe
possibly
from what I
hazard a
understand-
guess to like when I talk about sin, I'm referring to the Garden of Eden and
yeah,
the whole
that's
thing that
original
happened in
sin
that.
is the original sin is the act of Eve taking the apple from the tree in the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
That would be like the original sin. That is what original sin is. So from what I understand, the idea is that all people that are born into this world are born because of that action. So everybody is born in original sin.
Yes.
If you
In
get me.
certain sects, Greek Orthodox, such as myself, don't believe that. Greek Orthodox believe that like there was there must have been an original sin just because there
Yeah.
must have been a first. But the fact that you can't be held responsible for something that you didn't do.
Yeah, which is something that in future videos I want to do. I'm really of the impression that you can't punish somebody for something that they have no control of. Something
Well,
that is
see, the thing is, like, because we're born into sin now, like it cascaded, right? So even if we didn't do it, we're still born into it. We're born into a sinful world now. So it kind of cascaded down from that original point, if that makes sense.
or is I can't remember if original sin is that or if original sin is, and I know it's.
I mean, I guess
relevant in some
you
way.
could say sin actually stemmed from when Satan originally defiled the Lord, which was way
Or
before humans.
the other theory as to, or like the other, what some churches would consider original sin would be the story of Cain and Abel, when Cain killed his brother because he was jealous
Yes,
of him.
exactly,
I think
Kevin.
Well, I think almost every church, if you're taking the story of Cain and Abel, you kind of have to. I mean, plenty of churches nowadays, including at least the one that I subscribe to, don't believe in the story of Adam and Eve being literal.
Yeah. Well, that's like we have a lot of problems here in my country, for example, because our politicians, for example, are quite. A few of them are quite religious, and we have our main party doesn't acknowledge that dinosaurs existed. They say that dinosaurs are not in the Bible, therefore dinosaurs are not real. The world was made in 7 days.
Yeah.
They take quite a literal context from it. If you know what I mean?
I'm not gonna say. Listen, I totally get why people would because I can understand if you're thinking from like a biblical perspective, why it would be difficult to like understand certain parts of like the morality if you don't take the original story as literal.
Mm.
But I think from like a logical aspect, there's the famous quote, "Faith without logic is dead." And there's like something like faith without reason. And it's like if you're not willing to change your beliefs based on new evidence, then what your beliefs don't really hold the same value they should.
Is it not more that if your faith is rocked by new evidence, it's not faith?
Well, no, what I'm saying is the fact that there's a difference between having faith and being deliberately ignorant. I should have said than other things said. It's because like for example, people that like claim like you could say like that you don't need medical attention because God will save you. It's like you have faith, but it's almost every church would still tell you, you should still get medical attention.
It's kind of like a story in the Bible that reminds me of that is, you know, the story of the man at sea. He's swimming in the sea.
There were lots of men in the sea.
Yeah, be a little more specific.
There was a man that was drowning at sea, and he said to God, "Right, prove that you're real, save me." So then one man comes along in a boat and says, "Look, mate, will I get you out?" He's like, "No, no, God's gonna save me." All right, okay. Then another
I
boat
don't think
comes.
I know the story. I don't think it's in the
Yeah.
Bible. I think it's just like a famous
Is it?
like joke story.
Oh, okay. Well, even if it's not, I think it's a good is a good way to explain that. Like, there is a
The
possibility that you will be sent help from God, assuming God exists. You'll be sent that help in not necessarily a way that you would expect it to appear, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, for example, God sends the boats instead of God lifting him out of the ocean and putting him back on land.
Yeah. Not everyone
Uh,
gets the Ezekiel treatment.
Mm-hmm. But my whole basis for my argument is why, and I'm asking you two as Christians, what makes you guys think that? So what do you base morality off? What is objective morality to you? Where does it come from, and who gives it out? I suppose.
If I were to
I
view objective morality, basically under the assumption that God exists, I'm going to talk about secular morality later because I think that's more
Yeah.
interesting.
Uh-huh.
But under the assumption that God exists, if you think about it like by the Judeo-Christian idea, perfectly logical, perfectly benevolent, all that, then the idea is that any morality that God gives out would have to be the right one because it's the best one that could exist.
Slice.
Yeah, I mean that sounds pretty bang on. Kind of like what I said off the top is kind of like, God is assuming that God does exist, then he is the ultimate moral creator, right? So anything that we have is going to like any moral or whatever is going to stem from him, pretty much.
Yeah.
If that makes
Do you have
sense.
anything else to add to that before I start my side of stuff? No?
I'm good.
Yeah, go for it.
So the thing that I would bring up is what makes the idea is that God created everything, yes?
Yes.
And the idea is that if God created, for example, well, technically, first of all, morality is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a human construct, but
Okay.
it's well, in assuming God construct and people have created morality. Whereas if you assume that the Bible is real and God is real, God is the creator of morality. I would say that is morality not inherently subjective in terms of morality is based off perception, yeah? So
Okay.
Well then,
what I mean by that is
what is God's again, assuming if God existed, what is his perception of us humans?
to which I would add, if God has a perception of humans and if God has an intention for humans, there is that. My point would be that intention and that perception, what makes that objective? Is that not just God's perception?
Well, if he's
Well,
if he
the idea being, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Okay. The idea being that if you have a perfectly logical being and a perfectly like an omniscient being and a perfectly benevolent being, then the greatest morality, then they would be the person that could create the greatest morality that could exist.
But that's by no means an objective morality. That wouldn't. My point is that just because if I knew everything, and if I knew everything past and present and future, I knew that
Yeah. Okay.
I could perfectly understand morality. I still wouldn't be able to create an objective universal morality for everyone, because my very basis for morality is that it's based off perception. I'm of the impression that there is nothing like if you hold absolute principles. So if I use the example, for example, if you murder of innocent people is bad, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if I was to create an example where you're put into a position where you're walking along a jungle and you find a group of 20 people held at gunpoint by a bunch of soldiers, and the soldiers say, "Hey, if you shoot one of these 20 people, we'll let the other 19 go." So the point of this here is say, I believe that morality says that murder of the innocent is bad, and it says so in the Bible, yeah?
Yes.
What my point would be, is there not an instance in which you would have to forego your principles to... I don't want to use the utilitarian sense of a greater
No,
good.
I get what you're
but
saying.
The point is that what would you not be willing to do, and what would you be willing to do if there is a situation in which it conflicts with like human life, for example, and your principles? Because if your principle is it does very much come down to definitions in terms of, for natural law, for example, which made by Thomas Aquinas, his principle would be, right, well, you can forego certain principles in the pursuit of the preservation of human life, for example, yeah? So
Yeah.
you can go, right, well, if it says in the Bible that lying is bad, but if me lying to the Gestapo saying that I don't have Jews in my attic, if that preserves their lives, I would be okay with doing that, if you know what I mean, because
Yeah.
I have a good intention. The story that I'm referring to about the jungle is, if you say that you won't kill somebody, if you kill one person, that means the 19 people get to go live. If you don't kill anybody, all of those people die. My point would be, is it not almost selfish to put your principles of what you believe to be right above those lives? I know I'm kind of changing the argument, but I'm gonna draw that back in later on.
It's fine. I understand the argument you're making, and I've heard
Mhm.
a similar argument before.
Yeah,
Like the idea being, when is it okay to forego certain principles for the greater good?
yeah,
Well, one thing to know is, in the concept of, if we're basing the objective morality as the Judeo-Christian morality, then one of the things that a lot of people interpret. Well, I should clarify this. I would not say any human being alive today has the objective morality. What I
no,
would say is that they are that, like, none of us can properly understand what the objective morality is. We're just trying to understand, like, it's just trying to,
as
like,
best we can, I
grasp
suppose.
at it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of the idea of it's kind of the idea that that's a logical and moral gray area, when it's the whole the trolley problem. Do you pull the lever to kill one person to save five?
yeah.
And there are some pieces where
My
there are some
problem
pieces
is,
of yeah.
pardon? No, you can go ahead. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are some pieces of morality which you're normally allowed to forego for the sake of, like, situation. For example, you are allowed to lie, or you are allowed to avoid answering in certain scenarios, especially like the
Yeah,
Gestapo. Uh,
yeah,
they always say thou shalt not kill, but, like, you are allowed to kill if it's in the service of someone else,
yeah.
like, for
Or
the
say it
sake
was
of preserving,
self-defense, or
life.
Mhm.
And then there are always those tricky areas where, do you want to let one person die to save 19? And the answer to that would be, do we know what you'd do in those situations? No, because we don't have the objective morality. We can only try and grasp and comprehend it. But if there was if on the assumption that there is a super rational being, then any kind of reason that we would apply to it would break down. I've explained this before in a way that, whenever you try to, like, apply reason to certain concepts, like, the higher up you go, the more rational you get. Our reason starts to break down. But I know it's kind of, it might sound like incomprehensible. What I'm trying to say
Yeah,
is, you get to a certain point where, in the idea of objective morality, if you have a perfectly logical being, then their logic is so far above our own that we couldn't even comprehend it. So that what might seem ridiculous to us would be actually logical.
but that at that point, I still wouldn't say that is like what this super rational being, or a god, I suppose, what this person, or not person, what this god or being comes to decide as being, I suppose the best way I would say is not good. I would refer to it as the best way forward, if you know what I mean. Because in
Yeah.
that situation, like, if we hypothetically say that this being decides, no, I'm going to let these people die because of my principles, because murder is always wrong, and then you're
Yeah.
inadvertently killing 20 people just because they have decided that that is the best way to go for them, in terms of they won't forego their principles for I don't want to say preserving life. Essentially, they don't want to forego their principles for anything. Yeah, with the idea that their
Yeah.
principles are, like,
Objective.
objectively, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas another being could go, well, I've analyzed the situation. I'm perfectly rational. I've decided that killing one person to spare these other 19, that's perfectly rational way of going about it. My point would be, surely just because it's a super rational being doesn't mean that they're going to have the, like, even
Doesn't
if
mean they
they're
have the only possible answer. Doesn't mean they
yeah,
have the best answer.
and it doesn't
Sure.
mean that they have the right answer, which
Well,
so is there a correct answer? Is there an objective morality? Is there something that is always right and something that is always wrong? Because I find that even if somebody brings to me an example of something that I would consider to be, like, an example that we used in the discussion that I had with a few other people that I know. Somebody said, right, well, what if somebody, like, was to assault a child, for example? Do you think that's okay? It's like Woody said in the chat as well. What was it? I suppose the British were perfectly acceptable and right in telling the tribes to stop burning the widows at the stake. My point would be, just because that's done doesn't mean that's objectively bad, and I can clarify that now, because I'm not condoning it at the same time, if you know what
yeah.
I mean.
No, I get what you're saying.
My point would be that it happens, yeah. Like, for example, if I use the example of hurting a child, an innocent child who has done nothing wrong, who doesn't deserve, deserves I'll just say, for the sake of it, doesn't deserve to be hurt, right? This child is pure and good, and
It's an infant that was just born.
yeah.
Hasn't had the opportunity.
And you attack this child, I would still say that there is a circumstance within which you could justify that attack. In the sense of, if hypothetically there was a super powerful alien being that said, hey, if you don't kill this infant baby, I'm going to blow up the galaxy. You go, oh fuck. Well, do you see what I mean? This is an instance in which somebody would say killing a child is always wrong. That's an objective statement. It's an objective morality. This is always wrong. There is nothing that would ever, ever, ever justify it. But I've just given an example in which, if you don't kill this one child, it'll die anyway, and so too will the rest of everything. Now there's a situation which.
Can I just say
Go ahead.
one thing?
Mhm.
For me as a Christian, I believe, because, like, you know about, like, the 10 Commandments and stuff, right? Okay, yeah. So basically, one of them, it says, "Thou shalt not murder."
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this, I know it's really complicated and everything, but I think it has a lot to do with, like, the circumstances and, like, the context and everything, and specifically with these kind of killing or not killing examples. It's kind of like, well, the Bible specifically has said that you shall not murder, which is it's a slightly different thing than just straight killing. Like if you actually look at kind of like what they meant in the original language, which I believe was Hebrew. So there's you kind of have to like look at the language and context and all this stuff. So there is just that.
That's another issue I have with it, though. Apologies for cutting you off.
Yeah, no problem.
What I would say is that the Bible is translated from a different language. The Bible has been interpreted not only by the people that God, like, assuming God's real. I don't want to keep saying. For the rest of this part of the conversation, I'll just assume that God is real. Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
So God has told the writers of the Bible, "This is what I want you to write. This is what I believe to be true. Right? This is what is right and wrong." My point would be, these writers have taken what God has told them and said, written into the Bible, their perspective, their spin on it, I suppose. And also considering the fact that whenever you read the Bible, you yourself, I assume both of you can read the Bible and go, oh, so the God building the world, or God making the world in 7 days, is just a metaphor to say God created the world and he created everything in the world.
I can
It's
say
just
that.
Yeah.
I
whereas
can't
some
speak for
people,
him, but I agree with that.
yeah, whereas some people can take the interpretation of that and go, oh, so he started on the Monday and he was done by Sunday. The point is that the Bible, for example, like, I know this is probably a bit of a different discussion, but if we base our objective morality Bible, I wouldn't say we could do that because the Bible is up for interpretation inherently. By definition, as a book. Your perception of the Bible is going to be different to my perception. It's going to be different from Joe Blogg's perception. The point is that the things in the Bible, people read it, they'll take different things from it. They'll think, oh, he meant this by that. Whenever he said, "Thou shalt not kill," killing is always bad. Whereas somebody else can look at that and go from probably a more pragmatic point of view and go, well, if God says, "Thou shalt not murder," the principle there is the preservation of life. So if there is a case in which you have to kill one infant child to save the galaxy, you can forego that one infant's life to then preserve the rest of humanity and whatever life forms live in the galaxy. So the point is that the person can look at that and go, right, okay, well, to not do this thing would be inherently. It's almost like the argument that if you see somebody drowning and you let them drown, that's almost as bad as drowning them. Like, obviously you didn't actually commit the crime itself.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if I don't kill this infant child, I essentially indirectly kill everything in the galaxy.
Yeah.
So somebody would look at the Bible saying, "Thou shalt not murder," and go, "Okay, well, I can forego this one rule, this one, thou shalt not murder."
I
Right,
feel
okay,
like
well, I'll try.
in that particular instance, though, God was basically saying, like if you have like hatred in your heart for someone, or if you have hatred while killing someone or whatever, that is basically what he means by murder. Because like the thing is, like in the Bible, there's lots of accounts of killing and murder, and like even God wiping out whole entire nations. So I don't know. There's just lots that you have to kind of like take into context, I guess. And yeah, like a lot of it is metaphor. Like there's a lot of metaphors in there. So. Yeah.
But
Josh,
how do we know? Go
Can I
ahead.
say this real quickly?
Mhm.
Yeah. Just to one thing you were commenting on earlier, you were saying like in the baby story, like and you're saying like there's a baby, an alien says kill the baby or I'll destroy the whole galaxy.
Yeah.
A common interpretation of the Bible would say, well, you shouldn't kill the baby. But what I was kind of trying to get at earlier is that we don't know what the objective morality is. We just know that there's one out there, and we debate over what it might be. So the idea is that there is a definitive answer. We just don't fully understand it. And the definitive answer could be, oh, you can kill the baby for the greater good. Or the definitive answer could be, oh, you don't kill the baby and it just doesn't make sense to us because the being that makes the decision is hyperlogical. Like, can I just give you an example of why like human logic only goes so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll give you this scenario. Have you? Well, it's like it. Yeah, let me try and phrase it properly. There's proof that when you try to think of something like to an infinite level, our version of logic breaks down, which is why infinite logic wouldn't make sense to us. A classic example is: have you ever seen the mathematical proof that 1 equals 0?
I have not, but
There is a mathematical proof that 1 equals 0, and you can do it, but in order to do it, you need to divide by 0. You need to use an undefined number. And one of the
Okay.
things it kind of suggests is that when you look at logic from an infinite level, it doesn't make sense on our conceptual level. Similar thing can happen when you deal with infinity in almost any level. You can make things that are blatantly not true by our logic happen.
But what I would say is that I don't think it will ever be within human. I don't think it will be ever within our capacity to understand objective morality, assuming it does exist. Because I'm going back on it a little bit, thinking that maybe one does exist.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
my point would be that I don't think one exists only on the basis that it would be the interpretation of the highest, most intelligent, most strongest being. The being that, like, if we use God as an example, there are stories in the Bible of God doing things against his commandments to us.
The 10 plagues, that's one of the best examples.
So my point would be, is there one rule for us? Is there another rule for him? In which case, that's not a universal morality. That's not an objective universal morality because it doesn't apply to everybody, it just applies to us. Does our morality apply to aliens? Does our, like, and I know I'm kind of getting a little bit off track, but my point is that it's not universal to everyone and everything. We don't apply our ideology of morality to animals or plants or. I'm
thinking of like an objective human morality.
Okay.
An objective morality that applies to humans.
Even on that level, I would say that how can you have an objective of humanity? I am completely different to you. What happens if, like, is there minutia to this objective morality? Is there so many things that we wouldn't be able to consider that a super rational being would be able to consider? For example,
yeah, I would say there are. I would, again, to go back to what I was saying earlier. I know I keep on saying that, but the basic idea is that what I'm trying to get across is the fact that there is an objective morality in the ether. Like, it exists. And all we can do is we can argue over to try and find out what it is, not whether or not it exists. Like the question you brought up about the baby, my answer to that would be there is an objective morality. There is a most moral answer to that question, but we're not sure what it is.
Yeah. But at the same time, what I would say is that would God's ultimate conclusion on that example, would that not just be his perception? Would that not just be what he believes is moral? It doesn't mean that what he believes is moral is inherently moral, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's an interesting question because, like, for me, like, being a Christian, I believe that, again, like I've said before, like, God is the ultimate being. Like, he is he's God, right? He's all knowing. He created the universe. He has always been, and he will always will be. So, like, to him, it's like it's not really his perception or perspective or anything. Like, to him, it either is or it isn't, and there is no evil, like, if we want to call it that, within the context of him, right? So it's like, it's a really interesting thing to, like, I don't know, to think about.
There's no way that we would know that is another point.
Well,
I'm totally fine with.
Yeah, and I know it's like, it's kind of a bit like it goes back to the, is God real, is he not real, and at that point I can't say for definite, you can't say for definite.
Exactly.
I had another point that I was going to make that I have somewhat forgotten about.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead if you have
Yeah,
anything else to
I'll
say
just
while I try and
clarify-
figure out what this is.
I'll just clarify one thing. It's
Mhm.
to kind of say what you're saying. Is it God's perspective? I think that's a great example of. I was actually thinking about dividing this debate up into 3 places, but I guess I'll just kill this one now.
Okay.
The second place I was thinking of is if a God exists, but it's not the perfect beneficial. It's not the omni-beneficial, like ultimate rational being. Like it's like Zeus, a
Yeah.
God that's not all benevolent. At that point, like if you're talking about like imagine Zeus existed, Zeus would have a perspective on morality, but I wouldn't consider it the objective morality because
Yeah.
Zeus isn't a perfectly benevolent, perfectly logical.
Mhm.
The reason I consider God an objective morality is because if you think morality as the combination of desiring the best for humanity and reason, if you consider it of like right causes, like emotion and wanting to do the right thing, and combine that with logic, then the best example that could ever exist would have to. I mean, I'm calling it objective in the fact that it's objectively the best in the way that something better couldn't exist. And granted,
Jeez.
if you're saying like objective as in it's everyone will agree with it, then of course not.
Well, I don't mean it in
But
that sense, because that would be more the
Okay.
secular kind of. My point would be, in reference to this part of the argument, it would be how can God make a morality that is applicable to everybody, is universal, is
well, if he's
objective and true?
if he's omniscient and has perfect reason, then whatever morality he gives out with the best intention would have to be the best one that could exist.
Well, then my question to that would be, would you two be of the impression that God is all good, all powerful, all knowing? Yeah.
Yes.
If we're
Yes.
if yeah, I thought that was one of the things you were basing this debate on, like basing this portion of it on.
No, I am. I just want to clarify to make another point.
Yeah. Yes, if we're basing off the idealistic Judeo-Christian God,
Mhm.
all benevolent, all powerful, omniscient, then yes, that's what I would say.
My question would be, how could that God be all good and all powerful and all knowing?
Because
That's
he's
the
God.
well.
No,
Are you saying
no.
are you saying if he's all those things, why isn't our world better?
No, not necessarily. My point would be that, well, God picks and chooses when he involves himself in Earth. Yeah.
Well, I would say no, he doesn't pick and choose because, like you said, he's all knowing. So he's known everything that's happened and everything that will happen. So he has things very meticulously planned out. You know, he's like he knows what's going to happen. He knows.
And then the whole point would be
and
that we're
I know
not
that's
intelligent or
that's
rational
like
enough to understand it.
I know it's really
Yeah,
hard to understand that, but like
Yeah.
as a Christian,
It's-
that's what I believe.
My biggest problem with that argument, and here's the thing, I agree with the argument, but an argument kind of annoys me because it's always like an argument where it's just like, just trust me. Because the idea is we're saying I can't explain why God did this. I can't. I don't have the wherewithal. I'm not perfectly moral. I'm not perfectly omniscient. All I do know is that based on my belief, if we're basing this portion of the debate, on the idea of the idealistic Judeo-Christian God,
Mhm.
then we would just kind of have to accept that there is a proper explanation. It's just so much higher above us, involves so much information, involves so much logic that we don't get.
It's kind of
Yeah,
like
I would.
whenever a child gets cancer and somebody goes, "Is this all part of God's plan?"
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, so I would agree with theory on that. Yeah, and kind of
It's just a theory, a religious theory. Thanks for watching.
nice. And yeah, but basically, like expanding kind of on that, like basically, it comes down to like we are human, right? And if we're talking about the Judeo-Christian God, then he is all knowing. He's outside of time and space basically because he created it, right? So that being said, there's going to be things that we will never understand. And
yeah.
it's like, it's really weird to think about that. And I'm sure it probably upsets some people, but like that's just the thing. Like that's just the way life is. We are human. We are not perfect. Like we screw up a lot, and there's just things that we can't wrap our heads around. You know?
Is perfect not also subjective? In terms of
No,
how do we know
I mean,
that God, for example, is perfect in every way?
Well,
How do you
based on,
Well,
quantify
on this
that?
portion,
I would say
on this
because
portion of
like
the debate, aren't we assuming that? On this portion of the debate, we're just assuming that it's the idealistic
Sure.
Judeo-Christian God. If we're assuming that for this portion of the debate, then I would
Mhm.
say,
Like we
Yeah.
don't know that God is perfect, and even
Well,
if
yeah.
we assume that God is perfect,
Well, that's
how
what
do
I'm
we
saying.
know that like something else, like for example, how do we know that something else that could be as powerful or intelligent, or basically could there be another God that has a different perception to God despite having the same knowledge and abilities and so forth?
I wonder if it is even. I wonder if it is even possible to have a different perception if you're once you're at the point of omnibenevolence, omnipotence, omniscience.
My point would be that even if you know everything, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is a right way to go. It just means that there are several ways that you can go. So my point would be, in the instance of the jungle, where you have to, well, there is somebody that you have to kill in order to save everybody else. If you don't kill them, everybody dies. Even if you know every possible outcome, that determination as to what would be the best outcome, that's still a utilitarian. Right, well, what's going to give me the best of everything at the end of this? There is no absolute. It is always do this, and if you always do this, that will always be right. It's more of like a base by base, like kind of like situation ethics, where you take each individual situation into context and go, right, well, if I consider every single thing, I've decided that this is what is right. That doesn't mean that that thing is always going to be the best conclusion, I suppose, because there is a possibility that you could come to a different conclusion, and like essentially the whole thing is like, can you put a value on human life at that point? Because what happens if, like, do you know what I mean, in the sense that if you save the 19 people and one of those 19 people goes on to be the next Hitler, it would be in this situation, like in a utilitarian sense, the best thing to let them all die, because then that person can't go on to be the next Hitler.
Yeah.
Whereas what I believe objective morality is that there is, like, do we believe that there is an objective morality in terms of there are rules or there are guidelines that can be applied to situations that can decide? So I think the best morality to determine everything on a situation by situation example. Because if we have like say God prescribes us a series of rules like the Decalogue or like the Beatitudes, there will be instances in which those Beatitudes or those, like, the Decalogue comes into conflict with one another, and you'll need to potentially forego one in favor of another. And the whole point would be, how do I know what's worth more, what's more valuable? So I think it would be more important. It would be better.
That's the idea of perfect. That's why I said earlier. Just kind of go a little back what you were saying earlier. You're saying, like, if you were omniscient and you knew all the possible outcomes, wouldn't it be up to your perspective to decide which outcome is
the best,
the right one?
Yeah.
That's why I said it's omniscient and perfectly rational. So as in, like, you can you can logic your way through every decide, and based on your own intentions, your own perfect knowledge, and your own perfect, like, power, it's always hard to explain because it's always just kind of saying, dude, trust me.
Yeah.
But essentially what I'm saying is that if you had all that stuff, it makes sense that you could draw the one best scenario that no one else could fully grasp.
But when you talk about perfectly rational, is rational not just a like? Is perfectly rational not also subjective in terms of you are like you're rational according to somebody else?
Well, perfectly logical, I should say then.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
I
As in,
mean,
even at that
like
point,
rational, like I don't think like humans are inherently rational, really. Like like some people just they're just not rational, so that's one of those things where yeah, like
I think
maybe
that's in and
that
of
that could
itself,
be
to be
like
honest.
more of a subjective thing. Like I don't know, that's a weird one, rationality.
But my point is that how could there essentially I've kind of realized my argument is more of a how could a god exist as opposed to how could an object of morality exist, because I think the reason why that's important for me to bring up is if I can explain how a god exists and how a god would exist, I would be able to I would be perfectly acceptable or perfectly fine in saying, objective morality exists. But
Okay.
because, and I kind of feel like it's a bit of a futile argument in the sense that, I don't want to go around and round in circles and go,
Yeah.
hey, so how does God exist? Does God exist? And you go, yeah, I think he does. And I go,
Like,
well, I
what?
think he doesn't.
And then you're just like, well, crap.
Yeah,
We're kind of stuck.
which actually is a nice segue into if we can't agree that God exists, how
In
do
a
we
world,
then?
if we were to assume that God did not exist, how
Mhm.
would we think that there's an objective morality?
Yeah.
At that point, I would say, at that point, I'm going to go to the idea of Socrates and Plato because I like those guys a lot. Have you ever heard of a Socratic ideal? Do you know what a Socratic ideal is? A Socratic ideal?
Well, I don't have the best knowledge.
Yeah,
Could you explain it, please?
I'll explain it in basic terms.
Okay.
Not to sound like an elitist, like I'm smart. I'm not saying I'm smarter than you. I just because it's a
Yeah.
complex idea.
Okay.
A Socratic ideal essentially means that everything that in our existence that we can perceive and think of has somewhere out there in the ether a perfect example that everything else is drawn from. A great example: say you have a shovel,
Mhm.
and you can say, "Is this the perfect shovel? Is this the
No.
perfect shovel from which all the shovels are drawn from?" No, it isn't.
Mhm.
But because we have the idea of a shovel, before we conceived the idea, the idea must have existed out there in some perfect form.
But then that would be the idea could exist in a perfect form. Like you could, I would be of the impression that you could possibly have a perfect idea, but that execution of that idea, not so much.
Yeah. So just to clarify, would you be willing to say that it is out there in the ether? There exists an objective morality, just we can't practice it, even on a secular level.
I would agree that we cannot practice it, and again, my position falls into the I can't prove that God exists, and because I
Yeah.
can't prove that, my point before was how do we know that God is perfect? How do we know that God is all good? But we kind of have to assume that to have the discussion in the first place.
Because
And
we're assuming based off the Judeo-Christian God. Yeah.
yeah, my point would be like if I can disprove that God is those things, if I can disprove that it would be, and again, it comes back to my perception of what is logical and rational.
Mhm.
I would say that in my head, it's impossible to have a perfect being that is all good, all powerful, omniscient, omnipotent. But I don't know everything. There is possibilities that that could exist.
Yeah.
So at the same hand, I have to say, objective morality exists any more than you can say, or I can't say that it doesn't any more than you can say it can in that sense. In the sense that for the discussion, if we assume that God is real, yes, objective morality exists, but
Is that sorry? I just want to clarify. Is that what you're saying? Like, is that what you agree with now?
I,
If
I
God is
would
real,
I would say if God is real, if God is all good, all powerful, omniscient, omnipotent, I would say there is an element of um, perception in what is moral. In that sense, it's subjective to God's terms, but then you would change the goalpost. Like, I'm not saying you would change the goalpost. I'm saying that you should change the goalpost to mean that because God knows everything, because God is all powerful, all good, he would be able to make the best determination on what is moral, and then in that sense, you would have an objective morality in the sense of he knows what is the best in this situation. If you can essentially put a price on everything, if you can value everything within the situation.
Yeah.
My point would be that I don't think it's within our reasoning to be able to value every single thing. It's not
Definitely
ever going to
agree.
be within our value or within our capabilities to do that.
Yeah, I would
And
agree
also,
with
I
that.
find it difficult to believe that somebody like that could exist. And again, it falls back into the I can't say he's real, you can't say he's not real, because we
But
don't
on
know.
the assumption that he is,
Yeah,
you would. Okay.
I would say it's an objective morality in the sense that it is the best morality. But
Yeah.
at that point, would it not also be quite a utilitarian ethic at that point? Because it wouldn't be an absolute one.
Well, I mean, it's the idea of like it's.
The
Well, I mean,
absolute would be it is the best for everyone, which is also quite a utilitarian form of ethics, is it not?
Oh, again, that's based on our rationale. That's based on our
Yeah.
logic.
And again, like there could be something else that we can't understand that we can't factor in, which it makes it quite difficult to have a discussion like this, if you know what I mean. Because essentially, and I'm not critiquing you for this, I'm just saying that
I
for
get
the
it.
basis of this argument, you have to go, trust me, this thing exists, just,
Yes,
just
I know.
bear with me. And it's hard for me to argue from the perspective of, like, or to say, what if that doesn't exist the way that you say it does exist? You would agree that objective morality couldn't exist, yeah? Like,
Well, that's
if
what the next
God,
part of the debate is. Yeah.
well, it's not necessarily the next part of the debate. It would just be that if a God does exist, but he isn't all good, or he isn't all powerful, or omniscient, omnipotent, the
Then
point
I
would
would
be,
in that case, I would still say an objective morality does exist, but I would say the God's morality is not the objective.
See, my point would be that I would find it really difficult to reach that conclusion of what is always objectively ethical, what is always objectively moral, because at that point, like, essentially you have to make a valuation on every single thing and essentially go, right, well, this one human life is less important than those other 19 human lives, or this one baby who could become the next Hitler is less important than all the people that he will eventually go on to kill. The point would be, how do you know when something is always good, when something is always bad? Even if you know every possible outcome, there's no way that, like, see, my point would be that there is a possibility that even if God knows everything,
Okay.
God could still be fallible, in the sense that what happens if God says, if everything happens according to plan, it's moral and it's good, yeah?
Okay.
What happens if somebody tweaks that plan? I know that's like, say the devil, for example, tweaks that
I'll hear you out.
perverts
You
it.
don't need to clarify. I get what you're saying.
Okay. The point would be that if that plan is tweaked, I suppose it would be moral and, like, objectively moral in that sense, in that situation that God has presented. But it can still be, I suppose. I mean, yeah, it's
let me
kind of like all.
redefine the idea I was trying to say. Okay, here's the thing: the objective morality is not the objective morality just because God said it is. What I'm saying is the objective morality it exists in the ether as like the
So
perfectly
it's
logical,
independent of God.
Yes, but because God is perfectly benevolent,
The point
perfectly
would be that because
knowledgeable,
God knows everything, and is perfectly
he knows the
rational,
objective morality.
he has access to that,
Yes.
which is independent of him. But my point would be that even if he has access to that,
I don't think it would be independent of him.
Yeah, I don't want.
Like,
What
I
I
don't
mean
think
by
you can
independent of him.
I don't think
in
you
the sense
can,
that
like,
it's not like in the basis of this argument, you would say that God and this objective morality is synonymous, but the point would be that the point that theory is trying to make is that even if God doesn't exist, there would be an objective morality that exists separate to God, that they're independent of one another if God is in some way fallible. Yeah.
But okay,
I mean,
I'll just try.
yeah.
I know it's kind of complicated. I'll try and say what I mean. What I mean is the objective morality, from a Christian sense, would be a part of God because like God is all good. God is everything that could be good. So if there was an optimal morality, it must be God. What I am saying is that I'm not saying like if God all of a sudden turned around and said, okay, now this is the objective morality, that wouldn't be the new objective morality because God couldn't do that because God is already perfectly
yeah.
rational. So think about it this way: detach it from God. Say God doesn't exist for a second.
Mhm.
The idea that we obtain the objective morality, the reason God found that has the objective morality is because it's the perfect combination of benevolence, logic, and all that. Now, if you took God out of the equation, that perfect combination could exist. Or at least, even if no one could ever achieve it, it could exist in the ether.
But at that point, it's kind of like it's a different. It is very difficult to have this debate because it's kind of like I want to say that it doesn't exist because we're never going to be able to grasp it or access it.
Here's I'm willing to accept we will never be able to properly get it.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm willing to say that. But my argument would be if it's talking about like a Socratic ideal of does it theoretically exist? I would say yes. Can we comprehend it? No. We can only try and grasp that.
But at that point, it's a different argument in the sense that I would say like it could exist, yeah, because I think it's kind of silly to say that something doesn't exist. In the sense that, like, I can't prove that God is not real. There's no way that you could possibly do that because there are things that are not within our grasp, as we've tried to point out. So I can't prove that something doesn't exist because I don't have access to everything. If I had access to everything, if I was all powerful, all knowing, omniscient, omnipotent, I could go, okay, well, yeah, this doesn't exist because I know everything. We don't know everything, so we can't say that an objective morality definitely does exist any more than we can say that God definitely does exist. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, can I? Cryo has asked if you'd be able to hop into this. Would you guys be?
Absolutely.
I will invite
Absolutely.
him. So do you have any more points to make before we move on to the?
Talk so much. Let's let Slice talk if he wants to.
Yes, Liz?
I mean, I get where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it is really hard to like think about and stuff. And like you said, like we as humans will probably never understand it or grasp it or whatever. That's just the way it's gonna be, right? So that being said, like it's like you said, it's hard to tell someone that something does not exist or does exist. Like we can say that, but again, like personally, like my belief, right? My personal belief, my faith is that God and objective morality are like together, right?
Yeah, they're synonymous.
Yeah, like and how I get that from is from the Bible, from what my parents have taught me, what my pastor has taught me, the things that I've experienced through life. These are all the things that that I have at my disposal to bring me to that belief. That's not saying that I'm going to impose that on anyone. That's not saying that I can tell definitively that that is true or not. So yeah, it's one of those really weird things to try and get your head around.
And I do understand the Christian perspective in terms of Christianity and the morals within Christianity is not we will never be perfect, but
Yep.
we can try to be as close to God's ideals of what is perfect. We can try to be as close to that as possible.
I mean,
in terms
like
of
I heard, who was it? I think it was a pastor or someone was saying, basically, um, like it's just saying that we can try to be as perfect or as close to God as we can, but basically what it comes down to is us living through life, and can if we follow or try to follow in God's footsteps, then He will be continually redeeming us, and until we get to death or meet Him or whatever, then we won't be perfect. Like, we'll never come close to being what perfect means, if that makes sense.
So, would you also be of the impression that we will never have, as humans, we will never have access to objective morality?
Yeah.
Yes, I think us as humans probably will never be able to comprehend or have access to what we are trying to call objective morality, or what we believe.
Just for one clarification, when we say objective morality, we're talking about the I mean, I just want to make sure we're all using the same definition of that term, because we could get confused if we don't make sure.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the best possible that could ever exist, morality. That's what I'm thinking of as objective morality.
But at that point, that's also quite a utilitarian morality, in the sense of you have to factor everything in. You have to say what is the greatest good, which is not necessarily like, you can have absolute principles that won't always necessarily be the greatest good, I suppose. Because in the instance of, if I say killing people is always bad, so if I kill one person to save other people, that would be bad. So I shouldn't take into consideration the other people that will die if I don't do this thing. I shouldn't kill somebody in the first place, because that is inherently morally bad, if you know what I mean. In the sense that assuming that you have an absolute objective morality. My thing would be that I find it really difficult that if this did exist, it would have to take into consideration everything, like absolutely everything in existence.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, obviously we will never be able to access it. And I suppose it's more of a flaw in myself that I find it difficult to. There is something that I will never be able to access. It's hard for me to believe that there is something that I will never be able to access. I will never be able to attain or to understand.
Yeah, it hurts every human. It's
Yeah. Now, to be clear, like, for example, like me as a Christian, like I said, we've agreed that we as humans will never be able to obtain this objective morality, right?
But you can go as close to
However,
it as possible.
as a Christian, I believe that when I die, or either when I die or when the Lord comes back to Earth, that
whichever
then
comes first.
yeah, then we
Hey guys,
will.
I'm already here.
Hey.
We will understand everything. He'll give us the understanding, and we'll be, we'll have access to that when that time comes. But as humans, as pure humans here on Earth, we will never have access to that.
Okay.
If that makes sense at all.
And again, to caveat, it is a really difficult thing to wrap my head around, that there is something that exists that I will never understand.
Yeah, no,
I
struggle with that a lot too.
I can say that objective morality could exist, but I would not know for definite. Would you be of that impression, guys?
Yeah,
the only thing that makes me doubt the idea of is, like, I was talking about, like, the Socratic, like the idea of a Socratic ideal, the idea that a perfect morality could exist, and it's just like the Socratic ideal from all morality is drawn from. My only thing that would make me disbelieve that is because, again, at that point, I'm saying, well, Christopher, if you're thinking of like a perfect rationality in which it's infinite rationality, it's beyond yourself. How do you know the rationality that you just made isn't false?
That's actually. I would. Is that not almost the adaptation argument in a sense, in terms of if you have an original knife, any knife that is devolved from that knife cannot be perfect because it is not an exact replication of that original knife.
That's not what a Socratic ideal is. A Socratic ideal isn't saying the first ever example.
Okay.
What it is saying is
there is a perfect idea.
Well, have you ever heard like the concept where people like this is something like physicists talk about, even like purely secular physicists. They say it's almost as if numbers existed before we found a way to use them. It's almost as if the universe already obeyed by some laws of numbers that we didn't come up with. And the idea is that there were a Socratic ideal of numbers that existed beforehand, and then every idea we have is drawing upon a Socratic ideal.
So the idea is that there is an inherent thing that there are inherent things that are good and bad then, in the secular sense?
What Socrates was basically saying is that it's not as much as we create ideas, we discover ideas. And so the idea is when someone creates a morality, they're not when someone like says, "Oh, here's my morality, utilitarianism." They're not creating a morality; they're discovering a portion of the already idea of a morality that already existed.
Okay, and then once you could consider every single thing, the idea would be that
you would draw it back to the perfect example. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and I assuming you are able to do that, assuming a God that is all powerful, omniscient, omnipotent does exist, I would agree that objective morality does exist in that instance.
Okay.
Because
that's progress. We're all doing this. We're doing this like civilized human beings, and I like that. Yeah. It's good. Also, screw you guys.
I need to bang on the table and be like, no!
No! They disagree with me! No!
Because not
That's just your opinions, guys. Come on.
Hey, opinions. Can opinions be right and wrong?
That's just your subjective opinion, you know?
Capital
But your opinion's correct, yeah?
Oh, yeah, definitely. My opinion, man... If you don't have my opinion, then, like, what are you doing?
Like,
you're a Nazi.
Exactly. I mean, seriously, what the heck?
So, for the second part of this discussion, I think we have... Are you guys comfortable that we have explained that enough and that we've went into enough detail, or is there anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah,
I've got across everything I want to.
I think what it really comes down to is we will probably never understand some of these things. So, like... Like we can kind of like debate it all we want, but like we're not really.
We're never going to have a definitive answer.
Yeah, we're not really going to make the other person believe what we believe, right? So, like, which is fine. Like,
well, I mean, you could like my whole instance is if you have somebody that is relatively rational and you present a rational, reasonable argument. I think you could change that person's perception or that person's understanding of something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree.
If I had a reasonable explanation as to why the Earth was flat, I'd like assuming. Let's be honest, the world's not flat,
I
right?
Hear this.
No, I don't, right? But if I did, I'm pretty sure that if I had a very, very reasonable, rational explanation that was proven by facts and science, that you would go, oh, okay, well, now I have all of this information, and I have the information from both sides, I'm able to make a conclusion based on what you've said. So you can kind of, the more evidence you have, the better you can make a conclusion, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. But
help somebody make a...
Basically, in this instance, in this kind of, question of, is there objective morality, we will probably never come to that conclusion, like no one's mind will probably be changed just because we don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's not really going to be any evidence.
I would say you could change someone's mind. I would say you could change someone's mind.
I would say you could as well. Not as in like you don't physically grab somebody's mind and manipulate it. Like you could do that as well, actually.
Get out. Like you give the brain surgeon,
Rip out
get
their
out.
brain.
The numbers,
hypnotism.
Mason. What do they mean?
I want to be black.
But I would say that you could, if you present somebody that is reasonable and rational with evidence, that person would then change their mind. At one point, we believed that like the stars in the sky were gods, whereas now, with hindsight, we have went, oh, okay, well now we can understand that these are like balls of gas, these are planets, these are like, you know what I mean? You can kind of like the sun is not a Greek god with a chariot riding across the sky, you know. Like
Yes,
with evidence,
big
people can come to
ball of
conclusions.
gas. Also, humans
I-
are pretty gassy too.
I would
I always,
agree with that.
I think it's actually a great comparison what Josh just drew there. I think you can compare objective morality kind of like to our understanding of the universe.
Mhm.
You could say that the logic behind the universe existence, like everything that happens in the universe must have some logic behind it, right? Some rules that exist to make it work from a purely
Yeah.
secular level.
Otherwise, it physically couldn't exist.
But we don't understand what they are. All we
Yeah.
can do is try and grasp at those ideas. They exist somewhere. We just need to try and find them.
Yeah, we need to figure it out.
Yes,
Whereas
I think
there
that's the
is-
comparison to objective morality.
Whereas there is going to be instances in which we are not going to be able to perceive everything. We're not going to be able to have everything at our disposal to come to a conclusion regarding something, such as morality, because we can't physically factor in absolutely everything.
Yep.
Mhm.
But now that we have gotten to a good agreement, I think it's important that we get onto another debate. Is flat justice?
What?
Is flat justice?
Wait. What is?
Does Slice even know what this? Does Slice know what this debate
what
is?
is flat?
Slice, I'll let you take this.
What are you talking about? Flat? Like what? Flat shoes?
Okay.
Flat Earth? Flat.
Okay. Slice.
Yeah.
Big or small? Big or small? You need to answer.
Small.
Exactly. All right. Slice is on my side.
Yes.
Hey,
Yeah,
I
it doesn't matter.
disagree.
Slice.
Big.
Big. Oh,
Mm.
sheesh.
The small slice
Also,
is best.
I was gonna make this joke from earlier. I will prove to Josh with perfect rationality that the world is flat. Are you ready? My girlfriend is my world, and she is flat. Done.
Trying to get
Alright.
as many things as possible,
Wait.
just slam them on the table.
I actually hit my hand on something, and that hurt.
Ah.
Also,
The
by that
things
logic,
you
the
go
world
through for
doesn't
PAFE.
exist.
Wait. So wait, are you just saying that flat means you're right?
I would agree.
I don't think Slice. Have you ever heard the phrase? Have you ever heard the phrase "flat is justice"? Ever heard that?
Is what justice?
Flat. FLAT.
No, I've never heard of that.
The phrase is, "What's better, big boobs or small boobs?"
Big.
Flat ones.
Exactly, flat.
No, big ones.
I see. This was
You already
going
said
so well.
small, Slice.
I was gonna send this debate to my teacher, and then you've just gone and ruined it.
You can cut it off at the very end. You can cut it off at the very end.
I'm so
Right when this
confused.
started, you can send it to the teacher.
Have
Chat-
we? I
Chat,
think
how
we could
confused
actually.
are you?
Anyone
If
in
you're
the chat- I
confused,
mean-
put a 1 in the chat.
All two people in the chat. The event.
All two people in the chat. Isn't this?
Oh, it's one person in the chat.
Who is it?
Borgie, wait, Borgie, are you still here?
Hello there. I think I don't know if we went into the secular side of morality quite as much. So is this going to be the second part of the discussion? Yeah. Or
I was really just joking. I wasn't actually planning on going into.
I mean, we could try. Like,
Um,
I honestly, I probably wouldn't have any like good input into that, just because I haven't really
but-
thought about it and all that.
I was joking. We don't
That'd be
actually have to do it. I was joking.
no, I said that is actually like my whole debate stems from like as I said at the start, I have two ideas, both of which have kind of changed today. Which is like, it's not a bad thing. You can change your ideas based on new evidence. You've changed my mind, guys.
What?
The ideas you had an
We
hour ago,
changed-
you have to.
Wait, we didn't really give you any evidence. How did you change your mind? Is it because of our natural charm?
Yes, that's it.
I mean, look at Grievous. I mean, look at that handsome man.
Hey, Borgie's still in the chat.
So
Hey, poor dude.
my question would be that if
Everyone is born from A plus E. Kevin's making great comments.
if a god doesn't exist, right? How could we come to a conclusion on what is objective morality?
I don't see
I
in
think at
that
that point you just
event we wouldn't. I think it would purely be subjective, and everything would just go to shit.
I disagree with that. What I'd say is, at the point, because as I was saying earlier, like if you believe, like I believe that the belief in God is the belief in an objective morality, even if God wasn't true.
Kind of like
Yeah,
you believe in one,
yeah.
you kind of inherently believe in the other.
Yeah, because you're saying that because God is omnibenevolent, omniscient. Remember how I was saying earlier, like if there was a perfect being that could bring everything together, then there must be a perfect morality, and then that would be like a Socratic ideal, even if there wasn't a person who could bring it together. Just like how the rules of the universe always existed as an idea, even if we didn't have someone smart enough to piece them all together.
See, the other point I would bring up is the best morality isn't necessarily a perfect morality. It's as good as it can be, but it's not perfect.
That's a different question. That's a different question.
Which is
Whether or not
kind of
perfect.
the thing that I would bring up then is it a perfect objective morality if it's the best possible? Because surely the objective, like the perfect morality, should exist separate to the best possible morality, if you know what I mean.
Well, it depends on it. It's like, you mean like perfect being infinitely good and best possible just being as good as we're gonna get?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the big question of, is the best possible morality the infinitely perfect morality, or is it just the best that could exist?
Is that
And
the difference then, in the sense that also I think I missed a trick, and I wanna go back. How do we decide what is good and what is bad? How does God decide what is good and what is bad? Because are all of those valuations, all of those, if he makes a rational conclusion, every value that he places on everything within the situation, all of those values are going to be subjective, in the sense that humans don't have any subjective or any objective worth. Grass doesn't have an objective worth. Like you can't objectively quantify people any more than you can objectively quantify objects. You can make, like, of course you can go, I think that gold is $200. You go, alright, okay. And then tomorrow gold is $150. That's gonna change. It's not an inherent absolute truth. It's not gonna be constant or consistent.
I
So
kind of disagree with you on that, but anyways, go on.
Well, it's like if I use the example of I don't know, say water, for example.
Mm-hmm.
The worth of water to me, the subjective, like, water doesn't have an inherent value.
Water.
It has uses, and those uses are completely subjective. They're based on situations, yeah? So, water to a dead man is completely useless. Water to a man in sub-Saharan Africa that is dying of dehydration is paramount to their life, yeah? What you have decided is good in the situation isn't necessarily always and irrevocably and constantly good. It's just going to be like water, for example, isn't inherently valuable. Humans are not inherently valuable.
Well, see, for
if we go back to the
way
God
the
is
way
real,
that
God,
I look at it is, yes, water has no objective value to it. However, I would probably say that humans do have objective value because from what we again, this is kind of just coming from my kind of background and stuff. But like if you look at the Bible, then you can see that we, like us humans, were made in God's image. So that kind of right there gives a lot of objective value to us as humans. You know, like.
I'm just gonna stop everything for just a second and ask everyone to look in the memes.
Okay. The important stuff. Hi there. No. No, they're completely different.
No, I put it in the bottom left if you saw.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if they're the same picture.
They're not. Damn it. My point would be if I backtrack a bit on before, what makes the determination that a god would make that has infinite reason? What makes that conclusion perfect? What like, because they would have to be able to put a value on things that don't have value. So you're not able to do that. Even if you have infinite reason, you can't objectively say that water is worth this. A human life is worth more than this human life.
I would say everything has worth. Everything has worth. That's what I'd propose.
I would completely disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
not everything has you could say everything has a use, but I wouldn't say it has a worth.
Since everything has an impact, even like the smallest fleck of dust has some impact on how the world works. Nothing can be considered completely without worth.
Well, I would say everything's equally worthless. No, unironically, I would say that everything is
you
equally
heard it
worthless.
here, folks. Josh thinks you are worthless.
Have you ever seen the movie? Have you seen the movie Full Metal Jacket?
No.
They say that in the opening speech of Full Metal Jacket. You are all equally worthless.
It's true, in the sense that nobody has an inherent. Nobody's born worth anything. No human life is worth more than another human life. I would say that, 100 human lives are not worth more than one human life. I would say, because you physically cannot put a value on life. You cannot put a value on anything. Like you can put a subjective value on it, but that's not by any means objective.
But
do you know
what?
What I mean?
So
even
what?
From God's perspective.
But what if God? So basically, like, what if I told you that God loves you? Okay, assuming that there's a God. So what does that mean?
Me?
Like what? Like
the point,
isn't there a
think
value within that? Like
the point that I think you're trying to make is, well, like I don't know if I'm strawmanning a bit, but there is especially with regards to humanity, for example, God has favorites, even within humanity itself. So you'll have God's people. You have, like, if you love and cherish God, He will return that and reward that with eternal life in heaven and so forth. My point would be, are the relationships that God has with humanity and is what God values, is that not just subjective to what He thinks is best, given the fact that He has infinite reason? Just because He has infinite reason doesn't mean that by any means what He thinks is the best is perfect. Because my idea would be that the perfect thing, it just, within my reason anyway, it physically can't exist. And if I were to assume that, yes, it does exist, at that point I forfeit the argument and go, if God exists, then an objective morality can't exist, because if God is perfect, then you can't have a perfect morality. Well, I don't even know if I would agree with that, because even then, that perfect morality would have to be external to a god, because that perfect morality would have to be determined by somebody else, and that morality would then be subjective, because
Well,
it's
see,
subjective in terms of it's somebody
with-
else's opinion.
with that though, like basically God is the standard, right? Let's say there's like a graph or something, and God is at the top. We
Okay.
will never be able to reach that. But again, like we're told that, like, you know, through the Bible, that that A, God made us in His image, and B, that God loves us. So that, to me at least, that right there gives life quite a bit of value, you know?
It's valuable to
And
him. That doesn't mean that it's inherently valuable.
Well, I mean, it would
'Cause
be
value should be
it would be inherent because
An inherent. Sorry, go ahead.
well, it'd be an inherent because like
It's inherent in terms of there is 2 points to that argument, and I concede that, where it is, if God created everything, God would have favorites, and he puts his subjective worth onto people in terms of
I mean,
he valued.
I would disagree with
for
that, but
in what way?
well, I don't think God really has like favorites or whatever, right? I don't think that's the way that he operates.
Well, in the Bible, there is several instances of God favoring certain people over others.
Well,
For example, Joshua, what a lovely guy, blew a trumpet around a place for 7 days and blew them down and killed everyone.
well,
You
see,
know that story?
that's where like context
Jericho?
comes into, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in a lot of those cases, it's like explicitly said that whoever that God, like, you know, punishes or kills or whatever happens, that he does something to, that they were actively going against what he said to
So,
do.
is it
So,
not like
you know, having a God that is completely good, you know, completely perfect, someone without evil or bad or sin or whatever, you know, you can kind of tell like why, like a lot again, like a lot of those, it has to do with the context in which it's being presented. So I don't know, it's like it's all very confusing.
I know I'm backtracking a bit here, but because it's kind of like, the more I've gone into this discussion, the more I wish I could go back to the start and start this conversation again. Because if you want to say that God is perfect, yeah, you have
Yeah.
instances in the Bible of God acting, like, especially in the Old Testament, you have examples of God acting out of anger, frustration. You have instances where
I would
God
also say
will-
just, though, like he's a just God as well. So
that's just in his opinion. In his opinion of what is just.
yeah, but like we're talking about
It's
God
subjective
here,
to him.
so it's like I don't know, like it's
like if I use one example, which is it's not really. Do you know the story of Ananias and Sapphira? Yeah.
I just want to point this out that Borgie said in the chat here. Objective morality is determined by the dawn. I would agree
I
with
agree
that.
with that.
Yeah.
Can you disagree? Yeah.
We're all unanimous. But what was I saying? I said something that was, oh yes, the story of Ananias and Sapphira, where they essentially they lied to the church, said they brought more money to the church than they actually did, and then as
And
a
then
result,
they got killed. Yeah.
killed on the spot, and they weren't given the opportunity to repent. It seems that even in the Bible, it seems that certain people are given opportunities that other people aren't, and it's not particularly fair. And if it's not fair, I wouldn't consider it just. So if God gives the opportunity to, say, for example, a good example would be many of the people that Jesus comes into contact with are what you would consider in the context of the Bible sinful people.
Yeah.
And then Jesus gives these people the chance to repent and save themselves from eternal life in hell within the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is it that not everybody's afforded that opportunity? Why
It's
were
actually
Ananias?
It's
Go
actually
ahead.
very interesting that you bring up that exact story because I've actually heard many interpretations of what that story is meant to be.
Mhm.
Some people say that that was like whether or not that was like a pun. Well, it can go two ways. One, if you're saying like why are some people given this while others aren't? Again,
Yeah.
that goes back to we don't have all the perfect logic. We don't have all the perfect information behind it. We only know a bit about the story. But
But you
another
can't. Yeah. Go ahead.
But another interpretation I've heard of the story is that they weren't brought to hell. They were just took off Earth so they would stop interfering with the birth of the church. And that being that, like saying that they were killed off, but not in a way that they would go to hell, just so that they would, like they were being detrimental to the birth of the church. So they were taken off the world before they could be a bigger problem.
See, I find stuff like that difficult. Like, for example,
Now,
like,
here,
there are people that will
I'll
argue.
say, Josh, I'll say this. Sorry, I'll just say this. I completely understand, like you asking that question, and honestly, I probably would have that same question as well. Like, why does it seem like God, has favorites and then kills random
Yeah,
people with,
but
with
why
no.
why do certain children get cancer
Yeah,
whereas other
yeah.
children go on to be
I
child prodigies and so
completely
forth?
understand that. And to
again,
be honest, I don't have the answers for that. I probably
I don't
don't
think
know a
there
lot
is
of these
answers to
stories
it.
as well as I should. But I like at least like for me at least like with my faith and stuff, I would like for me like again this is kind of based all in my life and whatnot, but I would just say to God, you know, uh, if you are real, then you know everything. You know what's best. You know. So I'm just gonna give it to you, and just whatever you had going on in that situation or whatever, it's up to you. That's like, you kind of know where I'm going. Like,
See, my problem is that even if you know everything, you don't know what is like the very concept of right. You can't understand what is right even if you know everything, because right is a matter of perspective, and so therefore morality is based on perspective and context.
I would probably say right
Action that will
is
always be inherently
right is a
bad, and there's no action that.
perspective of humans, of the
But
flesh.
even from the perspective of a god that supposedly knows everything. Oh, hi, Crow.
Oh, wow.
Hey, Cryo!
Oh, hello.
Hey.
Let me
Hi, Chief.
just
Boost
I'm
your
redo
audio.
this
I
here.
just
Oh,
did my
here we go.
AP exam.
Oh,
How'd you
how were
do?
they?
I don't know what you call that. If that's is that a thing? I haven't British education in a while.
How old are you?
15.
GCSEs would be the nearest thing I would be able to equate that to. I didn't realize you were
It's
that
like
young.
it's like an exam you pay for, and then like you do it. But and you have to take like high. It's like advanced placement basically.
Yeah.
But how's you guys' day going? I think I did pretty good on it personally. Like it was basically like this thing about Eastern modernization, and I had to like read 5 things and analyze them and write an essay, but in 45 minutes. But I did good, I think.
That sounds a lot like our debate.
It does. It sounds like art. It sounds like art. My mom thought I was taking math after I told her that. I was like, no, it's not math. But yeah, I think it went well. I don't know.
Fair enough.
That's good.
Yeah, it was. See, because the coronavirus, or as some say, the Backstreet Boys reunion tour. But
Oh, really?
come
I haven't
on,
heard that
you
before.
Game Grumps is amazing. Okay, but
Uh,
the It's 45 minutes at home, but usually it'll be like 3.5 hours. And they're like, yeah, nobody's spending 3.5 hours on their computer taking an exam at home. So,
A lot of people do.
yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty good at history anyway, so like it wasn't that bad. Now if it was like math or something or like science, I would have died. Especially science.
See, I'm the
I hate
exact
chemistry.
opposite. I am so much better
Really?
at. Yeah.
I like physics, but I am really bad at chemistry. Like literally, I would have failed it without.
Chemistry's my favorite out of those, by far.
Did you take chemistry in the IB program?
Well, I don't know what the equivalent for that in the UK is.
The IB. It's an international, and you get like 24 college.
Well, I am going on to study law. I didn't actually take chemistry on because I was told that despite I enjoyed it, and despite the fact that I was like, I was somewhat good at it, I was told go into the low class so you can so you can disrupt their lessons and not the top class lessons. They're disposable. I was like, oh no. So I ended up with somewhat lower chemistry education, but you know, it was fun. I got to throw rubber bombs at people and so forth.
It's like.
I mean, I enjoy it. I wouldn't say I'm good at it.
There he is.
Like, cause like.
Greetings.
Hello.
Porgy.
Hello.
Oh, hey. Hey.
Hello.
I'm on a bit of a break. Hold on. I have the stream on in the background. I was watching it.
So, what do you think so far?
It's pretty G.
I felt like at the start I'm kind of coming into it a bit more as we
Yeah.
progress.
I joined about an hour in, so I don't know what happened at the start.
At the start, I was kind of like, essentially, I need to concede things for the basis of the argument in the sense that for this argument or discussion to happen, I have to say, right, okay, well, God exists. If God exists and God is perfect, then part of me wants to say that an objective morality could exist, but at the same time, I would say that that objective morality would still be.
Quality to morality. I think that the worse the act, the higher the more intense.
Everything went wacko.
Like for an act, the worse an act has to be, the more intense situation has to be.
Could you in any way make your audio sound a bit louder, Crow?
Like this? Is this better?
A little bit better. Can you make it even better?
Let me really quick check.
Oh no.
Shout really loud.
Oh, I was wondering something. You know how you brought up the idea of like, why do some kids get? I know this was quite a bit earlier, but you know how you bring up how.
Why
do some kids?
Oh my god!
Why is it windy?
That is loud. That's a loud one.
Oh, I have automatic input sensitivity.
That explains it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yo, we're.
No,
it's better.
I was gonna give an argument to the because I by the way I should know I am an atheist, but this is in response to why doesn't God
Wait,
obviously a hypothetical God.
Before you make your point, can I ask, are you of the impression that a God doesn't exist or that a God could exist?
I think it's possible, but I haven't seen I haven't seen evidence of it.
Which
I'm not gonna a good point. I just don't know, and I'm gonna assume not until it's like proven to me.
Yeah, which is kind of my point of view as well. And I know I'm kind of interrupting you a tad, but there's like a lot of people that'll bring up to like, because I'm open to the idea that God could exist. People say, right, well, you don't know that for definite. You don't know that the sun is real. It could be it could be like a projection or some something I don't know.
Yeah, I hate that
obviously.
argument. I hate that argument.
Yeah.
The idea is
God,
that
I personally, I do think a god exists.
somehow you got really
Yeah.
quiet again.
Yeah. He
Is this
sounds.
better? I think the mic just keeps getting away from me. Is this better?
Yes.
You are super loud
Yeah.
on my end. Like, because on my end, you are, like, actually fine. It's weird.
That's
Everybody
weird. I
like on
don't
full volume.
Darn
and I,
Yeah, now you're, like,
Discord.
ridiculously loud.
Actually,
The mic is like.
now. I was gonna say this. I've been on here. I have to head out for like a trip in a little bit, so I'm gonna get off here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
It's been great.
alright.
I think we should probably wrap it up.
But before I go, I would just like to direct everyone's attention to back to the memes for a moment.
okay.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Very, very well done.
Yeah, you sent me that.
Here. You
Oh,
know what?
Uh,
Okay, I'm going to I'm gonna grab it and then I'm going to put it into the stream.
Making memes at my expense. I don't like it.
No, we're not making fun of you.
no, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I probably should be using whatever.
But yeah, the idea is that if I have a good reason to believe in say logic and say for example the sun, I have a good reason to believe in certain things
Whoops,
because of
that's not what I wanted.
the information I have at my disposal. Because I have no information at my disposal to like, there are certain things that I can go, okay, well, yeah, I can agree that would exist. I might not know for definite, but I can, for the sake of like logic or reason, assume that it does exist. If I can rationally, if I can say that word, if I can rationally say that the universe is created not by a god, but say by a Big Bang, for example, which we can't explain any more than you can explain why God created the world.
Yeah.
The point would be that just because I don't know for definite doesn't mean that I'm going around in circles a bit. I do that a lot.
It's fine. It's fine.
The point I'm trying to make, if I can get directly to the crux of the thing, is I can't say for definite that a god exists, but it's not particularly. I wouldn't say it's implausible, but I wouldn't say it's more plausible than being able. If you know what I mean.
You cut out a little at the end.
From
Oh,
what,
yeah.
sorry?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I would say that a Big Bang, from my perspective, is more plausible than a god creating the universe.
I mean, the Big Bang has its background microwave radiation, and background microwave radiation is
Mhm.
Is
basically
provable.
this nearly, yeah, it's proven. It's nearly this indetectable
Whereas you-
leftover radiation on the. It's not on the visible spectrum, but you know it exists, and it's kind of like the stomach lining for the universe, and it stays there, and that's kind of how you determine cold spots, I guess.
Whereas
Like,
you
the
cannot.
universe has its own. It's kind of how you determine like cold spots, like the Voot's void, because there are places. It's kind of like, imagine, you know how in Guardians of the Galaxy when they go through those portals, everything turns like rainbow. That's
Yeah.
basically kind of how the most charts of
700
microwave
jumps.
radiation that I've seen look. But there's like small pieces here and there of it left because you know it's a Big Bang, it's a big boy.
Which are things that we can actually prove, whereas you can't
Big boy.
physically prove that a god exists.
I mean, yeah, there's no physical evidence. I mean, there's like the holy books
mean-
and stuff, but like
Yeah, but
that's more
to
like,
which I would
that's more
say
like
the,
yeah.
the
there's-
Bible
there's
is
no
no more
way.
proof that God is real than the Lord of the Rings trilogy is proof that the Lord of the Rings trilogy is a real place.
There's other,
Yeah, no, I
there's
would
other
agree with
evidence that's another
that.
debate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
However,
but there's evidence that the
I
things
mean-
in the Bible happened, but not necessarily that they happened the way they happened.
Mm.
So yes, you could
But-
say that there is evidence that
It's
Jesus existed.
for me. It depends on the Bible story. For instance, I'm gonna say this with somewhat confidence. I don't think the events of Noah's Ark happened.
exists. Yeah, I think Ricky Gervais's takedown of it was actually pretty funny because it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Noah's Ark has complete implausibility in the statistics of real life.
yeah,
And also, that's quite an interesting
Mm.
story in terms of God forsook every single human on the planet
Yeah,
apart from the
I
people
re-
that went
I
onto
think-
the Noah's Ark. And
I think
the
I
idea
think
is that God knows what
yeah.
objective morality is, or God is objective morality, which I would disagree with if he kills the fucking planet. Like,
Yeah, I think
I
think
mean,
it
to
was
be
more
fair,
like
he
a
did
tale
tell them
of,
to stop doing what they
of
were
like
doing.
a guy.
So
Yeah, I think it's like exaggerated because I think Noah was real and there was like an ark or something. But I
So,
don't
I'm
think, and I
small
think there was.
flood.
I'm just gonna hop off
Yeah,
right
I
here,
don't. I
so-
think like up to the flood
Okay,
happened.
goodbye,
I think
Theory.
it's highly
Cryo,
exaggerated. Like,
wait a second. You heading
Yeah.
off there?
Yeah, I'm setting off.
uh,
Oh, that's right. Adios, there.
It was great here. Listen,
yes, goodbye.
have fun, guys.
We will try our best.
okay.
Thank you for
Bye.
your time. Goodbye.
Uh,
Yeah. Anyways,
what
like
I was getting
for
at,
the
I think it's highly exaggerated.
Go ahead, Slice.
I was just gonna say, like, for me, the like whole Big Bang thing is hard for me to wrap my head around. Like even if those things, like those things that are technically
Yeah, the particles
provable,
and so forth. Yeah,
the whole thing about like
but that's
this
argument would
thing
be-
happening, you know, billions of years ago and everything like that, like that to me is extremely hard to believe.
But is that any less believable than the idea that there is an all-powerful, all-knowing, like brilliant being that created the universe billions of years ago?
I think.
You know what I mean? It's
Well,
kind of like
I mean,
it's.
There's
I find it more rational. I find it more rational and more plausible that it was. I don't say coincidence, but like.
Well,
It
that-
makes more
Accident.
sense that it wasn't a fucking god, essentially. Like, I find it hard
I
to
mean,
believe that there is a
yeah.
like
Mm.
being above everything. That's
'Cause
implausible
there's-
to me.
Yeah.
More implausible than a Big Bang.
like
There-
one thing. Oh yeah, you go.
There's something that I read once. You know the SCP website.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's a story on it that actually brought up a pretty good, like a pretty interesting point. Is that if we make up stories and we see like we're like way above them, like even the gods in that realm are nothing compared to us. Like we see everything in that as fictional. How do we know there's nothing above us that sees us as fictional? Like that comes like the parallel universe argument type stuff, like the multiverse stuff.
The
Yeah.
point is that,
That, like-
we don't actually we cannot
Yeah.
in any way prove that though. Whereas we can
Exactly.
actually we
There's-
can physically prove that there is evidence
mean,
to
the-
suggest that the
the-
Big Bang exists. There's no
the
real
multiverse
evidence to
stuff-
suggest that there's a god.
There's like actual like scientific basis for them to like go out and like try and figure out if there is a multiverse. Like I read this
Well,
thing
you,
about
like, you could-
Stephen Hawking right before he died. He was working on a theory to see if there's other traces of other microwave background radiation or something like that.
Ooh.
Yeah,
which would be
to-
quite an interesting thing.
Oh, no,
it
that's
would be
cool.
interesting. I personally think that if the Big Bang happened once, it could happen again. Like
Yeah.
Something
'Cause-
that I want to add
Yeah.
is the idea that God exists. Like, essentially,
Guys,
if you
my
believe
dog's
that.
barking.
No, that's right. We
oh,
can't
we
hear
don't
it.
hear it. That's-
All right.
If you assume that God exists, you have so many more questions, and like just as many questions, if not more, than a Big Bang in terms of who made God, where did God come from, like how does God exist, how does God know what's right, how is God all powerful, all knowing, omniscient, omnipotent, why did God create us? You have so many fucking questions. Whereas if it's a Big Bang, it's just, well, yes, it's like how did it happen?
Why
It
did it
happened in
happen?
such a way that it created what it created. How did it get to that position in the first place?
Is it technically still happening? Because like.
Yeah, because the universe is constantly expanding.
But those are all
But that's-
quantifiable
is that what dark
questions, I
energy
think.
is?
Those are
Mhm.
quantifiable questions that we can actually get answers to those, whereas we can't get I don't think we're ever gonna get an answer to like assuming God is real, why God does what he does, or how God does what he does. We're not ever going to be able to understand that, whereas we could understand something like the Big Bang. And
Although
there
isn't
is
that-
also
Well, I mean,
Because you bring this up earlier about God coming back. Wasn't it
Yeah.
Jesus coming back?
yes, Jesus coming back.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
believe that.
Jesus being God is a weird, dumb thing.
I think it's
Yeah.
more like people have the ideology of the Holy Trinity all being equal in terms of like God is
don't-
the Holy
I don't
Spirit
see it.
is Jesus is it's kind of like they
Well,
are
God's
separate.
the Father.
Yeah, Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. But
Yeah.
the idea is that, like, I know for a fact in the Catholic school that I went to, the idea was they are separate entities, but they can they all have the same goal, and in that sense, they're all synonymous. If you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Like they're all striving towards the one thing. They act
Well-
as one being overall. If you know what I mean. With
Didn't
all have the
Yeah,
same
certain
I
potential.
can see that.
Well, didn't in some stories Jesus actually disagree with God?
Yeah.
Like he actually had disagreements with his dad.
That's just kind of like a lot of like stories I see about prophets and stuff. Like they have their queries with God, like
Which is
the-
actually that's also a really interesting point. I'm sorry to interrupt again, Grow.
it's alright.
Slice. The idea is that God knows what objective morality is and always has done and always will do, and yet Jesus disagreed with some of the things that God taught. So at that point, Jesus has come down and went, "Hey, what Dad thinks isn't perfect." Because the notion would be that you can improve morality. You can't perfect it, but you can improve it.
Well,
So,
Just
see,
imagine God being like teenagers.
I'm not too
Oh,
sure.
Jesus, oh my
I'm
God.
not exactly sure what you're referring to when
For
when
example,
you say he
whenever Jesus
disagrees
said,
with, like, I haven't heard of Jesus disagreeing
In-
with God. Like I
you know,
haven't
the
heard that, but
turn the other cheek parable, where
Yeah.
Jesus says, "It has been said to you, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth," whereas I say to you, what was it? If someone slaps you in the left cheek, you turn the other cheek. So the idea is that God taught before that if somebody wrongs you, you wrong them the same to like even out the scales. Whereas it has then since came to fruition that Jesus went down and went, "Hey, no, that just causes more pain. This is a better way to go." In terms of God didn't always know, and God does not know, and God will never know what is perfect morality because it cannot exist.
well, I mean, again, like I don't know these stories quite as well as I probably should. And
I'm an
I would,
atheist. And
I would. Okay, I would say this. I would need to know the kind of like the full context. I'm not saying you're wrong.
I think Jesus was on the cross at the time.
I don't know
Was
much
he?
about Jesus.
I don't think he was
I
on the
think-
cross.
I
think
would
he was on the
hazard a
cross
guess
when he said that.
as I would just hazard a guess as to say that there's more context in both of those situations to that it
Mhm.
like it may seem like it's contradicting each other, but
If I was to play ironically devil's advocate to my argument, I would say that I would say that Jesus is perfecting God's idea, but even at that point, it's kind of like it's still an idea. It's not going to be a perfect morality. You know what I mean?
I mean, God's the one who came up with Bach jellyfish. I think anybody could perfect his ideas.
Like just because you came up with an idea doesn't mean that that idea is perfect. If I come up with the idea for a knife, that knife isn't gonna be perfect in any way, shape, or form because its perfection, its goodness, I suppose, depends on the context.
yeah,
If
no,
you
I would
if you
agree with
use a
that.
knife as a hammer, it's going to be significantly less efficient and effective than if you were to use a knife as a knife is intended to be used.
Hold on. That's not true if you're cooking certain things like ginger and stuff. Like ginger.
Ginger?
Ginger, yeah. You have to like squish it, so you can do that with a knife. Like
No, I mean
that's
as
what
a hammer for nails.
Oh yeah, alright, cool. I was like, wait,
I was like, if I use a knife to hammer in nails, that's going to be less effective than using a hammer.
probably yeah.
And also, if I use a hammer to stab somebody, that's going to be less effective than if I use a knife. So, you know what I mean?
What?
Wait, do you guys know about the scythe, the parry animation in Dark Souls with the scythe?
I played Dark Souls. I can't remember the parry animation for that.
Okay, so you know how a scythe has like so basically instead of so with the sword when you like stab them after you parry them, with the scythe you do the exact same thing. Instead of like slicing them, you like stab the entire front of the scythe through them.
Oh.
Like it's the funniest thing to look at because it's like so physically inaccurate.
Yeah, it's almost like that's the issue because
It's a hammer sword.
scythes aren't meant to be. Yeah, they're not meant to be used as weapons. They're farming tools.
Just to farm crops and wheat and so forth.
Yeah, they're supposed to like cut through leaves, I think.
But to get back on topic, is there anything else that you wanted to add, Borgie, from the discussion that you listened to? And I know, like,
I was gonna. This is from an argument about ages ago, and you brought up like, why do some kid like? And again, this is just a hypothetical. Like, I'm an atheist. But like, assuming that God is real, a potential argument to be made of why, like, some people have it worse than others. It could be a case of
it's God's plan.
No, not it's God's plan. It's he might not be like actively doing it. He's just letting things play out. He's not interfering.
I feel like I'm more into the thing where he like just put humans on Earth and let them do whatever.
Yeah.
Like set ground rules for them to follow to be like decent people.
Yeah, I prefer that idea. Mainly because I don't like the controlling my every action.
That's what I was taught.
No,
like,
see, there's
if humanity ever gets way too out of control, God will just be like, nah, meteor.
See, that's a point. That's a point that I actually, as a Christian, I have a hard time wrapping my head around. Because there's also the whole thing with like what is it called? Like free will and stuff, and like all that stuff.
I was just about to say,
it's so hard for me to understand that.
You believe in determination, yes, Slice?
Yeah, because like
what
your
do you mean by
wait,
that?
wait, saying? You believe that there are of a set path, and we will follow that path, and that path will never change? Or do you believe that we have free will to make decisions and choices to change our own path, or do you believe a combination of the both?
So I believe that, like I said earlier, like God has a plan for every one of us, and it's been in motion for since the beginning of time to the end of time or whatever, and He knows everything.
We have.
So basically, I believe that God knows everything that's going to happen, that ever did happen, and that will ever happen, right? But also, I believe that God gave us free will, which is kind of where we ended up today with the But
we don't have free will if He knows what's going to happen.
No.
See, that's the thing. That's the thing.
Necessary.
I actually have that question. Like, how can that be? See, I have that question. I don't understand that.
If He knows how it plays out, and it will always play out how He sees it in the future, we don't have a choice. That choice has already been made, whether that be by us or something else. We don't actually make that choice. That choice is like me saying these words right now is not me saying those words. I am always going to say these words. I will always have said these words. It's not. I don't make that choice. If you believe in determination. Which, so to clarify, determination is the idea that there is like everything past, present, and future is fixed and determined by a god, for example. So.
Well, I mean, yes, but like I said before, like I believe that again, kind of, I guess you would call it determination,
fixed,
but
like, can you have a choice? Is the question.
But like I said as well, like I have that same question, like how do those two things work together, right? But
when they seem to
cross
oxymoron?
each other, like exactly.
Yeah.
However, I have faith that that is the way that things are, and that is something
Which
that
is
I may never fully understand about who God is.
which is going to be the difference between people, and I'm not trying to make a differentiation whenever I say this, but I mean people like you that have faith, and then people like me and Borges that if I want to speak for Borgie, I would say that we value more evidence and proof and things that we can quantify and qualify.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult for. There are certain things that I can concede. It's like if I say I don't believe, or I can't say that God is real because I have no proof to say that God is real, and somebody goes, yeah, well, the sun isn't here at night. Do you believe that it's not there at night because you can't see it?
That's a stupid argument.
Yeah, that's a stupid argument because I can concede. Well, obviously, I know what happens to the sun, but I can also concede. Like, I can understand that. I can qualify and quantify that. I can. The very definition of a all-knowing, all-powerful God that, according to some people, depending on who you speak to, doesn't has a plan. For example, that plan's going to be far.
I think
we're never going to be able to understand that, and that's why it's so difficult to wrap our heads around such a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
I personally, I think like, because as like someone who believes in God, like I think it's more like Garnet from Steven Universe, I guess, where like he knows like every probability of anything that can happen.
But that doesn't mean that you will be able to know what is perfect morality.
Because my mom literally always tells me when I do stupid stuff. She's like, God gave you a brain, use it. And I'm like,
yeah.
No, I didn't. You gave me a brain.
Yeah, I've never heard the sun argument before. I've heard a different argument that might actually be more stupid.
I don't know if it can
be. In religious class, right? My teacher, when I was like, "Hey, how do you know God exists if you can't see him or something?"
Oh, is this?
How do you know air exists if you can't see it?
Oh god, that's even worse than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah. And she goes, and there was this one time I was like, if air doesn't exist, why are you still alive? And she goes, because of your soul. And I'm like, how can you have a soul? She got pretty pissed from that one.
Hey, what's the answer to this yes/no question? Option C. Next question. But well, an example that my ethics teacher explained to me was, he said, if I show you a clock, what would you assume about this clock? I go, alright, well, it was probably made by somebody. He's like, right, okay. So you look outside and you look at that tree. I go, right, well, I would assume that was, like, it grew. It was planted and it grew. He's like, but would you not apply the same thing and say, that tree was made by somebody or something? I was like, well, yeah, in hindsight, I'm like, there could be a process that explains it. There could possibly be a process that creates a clock. Like, it's unlikely, but you could have a natural process that creates a clock. You know what I mean? There could be a freak anomaly or a freak event that could possibly create a clock. It's unlikely, right? Okay. The next.
I mean, there's like, what's the definition of a clock then? Because people used to like
sundial.
Like,
there we go.
If you're like stuck,
nature created a clock.
Yeah, because like it's just like something that tells the time, right? Because like if you're stuck in a desert without a watch or something, and you don't know what time is it, you can literally put a stick down and see where the shadow is.
Yeah.
But the argument he was trying to make is, because this thing exists, it must have been created, which I
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's if I was gonna like possibly make an argument, I'd probably say like, okay, so we don't realistically know the 100% truth. So, and because lots of things are created, it could be assumed that we were also created.
I thought of a very
possibly.
I thought of a very good example there. I don't like. So, God, by definition, must have created space.
Yes.
God created nothing. Like, the actual nothing. He created nothing. Like, actual nothing.
Yeah.
So, how do you...
Wait,
the very
how-
definition to say that something can't have come from nothing when God created nothing from nothing.
Wait, are you saying space
something
is nothing?
created nothing.
Huh?
Wait,
If
are
we
you...
assume that nothing as the concept, like
Oh,
the
okay.
concept of nothing.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
the
but
vacuum
the
of
concept-
space is technically nothing, right?
But like, he would
So
have
God
too much
created
Yeah.
nothing, like the
'Cause,
actual
like,
nothing.
Because if
If
there's
you know what
like
I'm saying?
nothing, yeah. Because if like most would say, oh, God has always been there, right? So if there's nothing before or after God, like God, let's say God, you're God or something, and you just like open your eyes or something, and you're like, wow, I'm here now.
Like essentially, God would have had to create everything from nothing,
Mhm.
which
yeah.
which also defeats the purpose, defeats the argument that my teacher was trying to make in terms of he said that something can't come from nothing, when in actuality it's scientifically proven, like with regards to quarks and so forth, you can have quarks that just seem to come in and out of nothing.
Yeah.
You like
I think
the very definition of God creating the universe, a God would have created the universe from nothing. Unless of course there are some people that assume, right, well, yeah, the Big Bang happened, but God did that. At which point you're like,
the thing is how like if there's one God, how
You know what I
how do we
mean?
know there's not more than one God?
Yeah.
Like there's yeah. Because there's a lot of polytheistic religions.
yeah.
Mhm.
It is very, very difficult, and I know I've said it several times, to wrap our heads around this. And I find like discussions like this, even if there isn't an answer to it, I find it interesting to ask the right questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think the hardest thing to figure out about God is what is it like just always being there, like being like un
You're simultaneously
scathed by
nothing and everything.
no like the concept that he's been there before at time and will be there after time
Yeah,
when
see
everything in the
that's
universe
that's a thing
collapses
that
or
I
something.
have a hard
That's the
time
hardest thing for
thinking
me to
about.
go around. Like, did he just wake up one day and was like, "All right, well, I did that," or
With
did he
his,
like?
See,
I'm just picturing the idea of where actually God's college art, like his God is like an art student, and where his art project.
Yeah, that. I mean, okay, that's the thing that I've seen a lot of people say that like Earth is like his painting or something, but it's like, well, the universe is so. That's like
Yeah, wouldn't it be
my
the
thing is like,
universe?
yeah, because like my thing with the universe is it's so big, right? The known universe is 13.2 billion years old, and the known universe is theoretically as big as we think it is. So how do we know that there's not um if God created the ability for humanity to exist, how do you know he didn't like that's why I think aliens exist, right? Because it's like so big, but we
Mhm.
haven't seen them yet.
Yeah.
From a
Like,
secular
there's actual-
perspective, from like if I don't consider God, I would say that aliens almost definitely have to exist because
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
fact
because how
that
big the universe is.
But I say that with the caveat of, do I think aliens definitely exist? I don't think aliens
it
definitely exist,
exists.
but I have like a 99.9999% like almost certainty that they do exist, because it would be like, again, it's
I feel like
I can't say that something does that I don't know for definite does or does not exist. I can't make a statement on whether it does or does not exist because I don't know for definite.
I feel
Same
like
as for
if
God.
tomorrow, I feel like if tomorrow NASA came out and was like, yeah, we just like figured like we just mapped the entire universe, known and unknown, aliens don't
Yeah.
exist or something. I'd think that would be more evidence for God than there not
Even
being.
that,
Yeah.
they've just went. We've mapped the known and the unknown. So,
Because
so
Or
what?
well,
Like,
I
if
guess
I
that's
can-
all known then.
it's a weird idea. Because if I
Yeah.
can actually get a phrase, is that like the whole "is there a God or not?" It kind of comes around the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Yeah, that's the weird thing.
Mhm.
It's a bit like
Oh wait,
the
do you want to say that
another
again?
example.
Sorry.
absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
So just
Yeah.
because God is not here doesn't mean that God doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like although at the same time, because we don't have evidence of it, it doesn't mean
Exactly.
it means
yeah.
we can't know. So that's the
Like,
kind of
Yeah, you can't make a judgment either way. You can't say definitely does. You can't say definitely doesn't.
There's a lot of like ethical, like not ethical, but emotional things to God too. Because there's like okay, let's say like Stephen Hawking was right. There's a multiverse. Where did that multiverse come from? Was there another Big Bang? Are there more multiverses? Now
Yeah.
there's even more questions.
It's almost like
people
more
can be
answers
"Oh,
spark
God
more
made the
questions.
multiverse." Yeah. Yes, there are more universes. Am I in one of the other universes, just like weirder or something? Which,
There is a very real
Mhm.
possibility that there are different layers to reality, for example, and that
Yeah,
there
that's what-
could
that's-
exist
that-
different like beings on Earth, just in
that's
a
why I
different
find that-
level of reality. For
Well,
example,
that's what
that's
I
kind of
find
that's
possibility.
kind of
We don't
where
know
like
definitely.
spirits and stuff come
It's like-
in. Like,
yeah.
Because that's
Mhm.
what I find so interesting. Because it's like, all right, so we find Spider-Man fictional. How do we know that there's not an actual like reality below us that where Spider-Man is not fictional? Because like we did like because like
Well,
No,
first things
there's a-
first, I would move to that.
Yes.
I would try too. I would love to, dude. I know that like even if Carnage kills me, I would be like, at least it's Carnage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna risk
What
my
if you
life
go
to
into a
see.
universe and you get bit by a radioactive spider and become Spider-Man?
Oh, good.
Ow,
Yeah, dude.
it's a
I
spider.
would like. I would hibernate until I wake up in that universe, like the laws of reality.
Still age
There's-
if you hibernate.
But then it's like, how do we know that this isn't like all of humanity isn't just like this light novel, like romantic novel or something by some like weeb in their apartment in a different reality.
Chris Chan is God.
Christian, I don't know who that is, but I don't want to know.
Oh no! So
50
he
Shades.
literally wrote like basically his own world, but he thinks it's real. And some of the characters he created, I'll just name it one for you. Sonichu.
I
What?
thought you were
Did you
talking
say
about Christian
Onichu?
from 50 Shades of
Sonichu,
Grey.
yes, a combination between Sonic and Pikachu, and he basically wrote a story. I think it's like Quick World or something, like QWC. I'll have to look more into it, but basically he wrote like a bunch of.
Yo, you
you
cut out.
cut out.
You super
Borgie, come
cut out.
back.
So
Your mic broke.
he basically created like a bunch of characters,
Uh-huh.
like fan fiction characters, and that he genuinely believes those characters are like real. And he claims that he travels to Quickville, that's what it's called, and meets them. Yeah, travels to Quickville and meets them. He did an interview with Count Dankula. Yeah, do you know who Chris? I'll post a picture of Christian.
I thought you were talking about Christian from 50 Shades of Grey.
No,
This man is
so
actually trying to become Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club.
I'll post the picture in the active podcast that this is Christian. First picture that comes off of him, by the way.
Whoa.
We'll send one day.
Oh no. Oh. Yeah. I feel bad for him.
So, anyways, it's
God made him that way. He's meant to be that way.
It's for
Yeah, and he believes that this is a real thing. He believes this is real.
Jesus Christ.
It's like
oh,
Homer
that picture.
Simpson.
I know
Yeah.
that picture. I thought that was drawn by like a 3-year-old.
It looks like Homer Simpson. Yo, Slice, can you bring that up on stream?
yeah.
Okay, it looks like Homer. Okay. That man, it looks like a 4chan post if it came to life.
Yeah, and he actually believes this is a real creature that lives in a universe that he created.
It looks like the oh god, what the heck? Okay, never mind. Something came up.
Alright, there we go. It's up on the screen here.
Is there
That
Looks
anything
like the
else?
reason Toys R Us was cancelled. They
That
had
is
on
quite
the board.
something. I must say.
It's called CWCville, Quickville.
Is there a
Oh.
name for this character?
Sonichu.
Sonichu. Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Sounds. sounds
I just.
that sounds like your Twitch streamer's name.
Yeah, and he's basically the god of the Quickville.
The god.
He
Not
literally.
even like a mayor.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, the mayor. He literally Quickville.
Oof.
He's
what the
basically
heck?
Movie Bob if like he committed to his ideas.
Yeah.
Nah, man. No, if Movie Bob committed to
He
that,
didn't.
We wouldn't have a planet anymore because we would have nuked us all.
He did it. Dankula.
He just euthanized like, dude, like unironically, we could actually, while we're here, unless we want to discuss anything else on the objective morality debate, because I don't think we've covered everything because it's kind of difficult to cover everything, and there's some things I
Yeah.
want to touch on in the future.
Can't you with him?
But-
I just posted the link.
But there is we could bring up some of the discussion that we had with Movie Bob and his minions, Borgie.
Oh yeah, I got
Did we have-
no,
you
I
guys
got quote tweeted by Movie Bob.
What? Oh, I got liked by ER, but that's okay.
Yeah, I got
Okay.
quote tweeted by Movie Bob.
You've succeeded
Well,
in life. You've
Basically,
won.
what I said was,
You got a college degree, basically.
yeah, what I said was, my exact words were, I haven't seen, basically, the overall point of it is, I haven't seen it. It looks pretty crap. But if I'm being honest, I basically just said it looks crap, although I haven't seen it. And that we're talking, and that I trust, the quartering more than I trust Movie Bob.
Therefore, homophobe.
Yeah, therefore I'm a homophobe. Legit, one dude unironically said that
Will I actually read
like,
the Twitter feed?
yeah, go on Twitter. I had a very long debate with the guy, and he said like the first image proves, like the first tweet from he was like, "Can you show me evidence of his homophobia?"
Yeah, you showed him
and,
evidence.
Yeah, and he did not show me any evidence. He just called me a homophobe. But I
Well,
brought
I
up the fact that I used to be like to try and counter the point because okay, do you know what he is?
Who? You cut out.
Yo, the feed has got worse.
Do you- Oh yeah, do you know what bi-curiosity is?
Yes.
By curiosity, no.
It's
by-
basically when you think you're gay,
Oh yeah.
but you're not.
Mhm.
Oh.
I basically said that, and his response was, "Oh, typical homophobes say that all the time."
Oh, that's like when I.
Wow.
I remember Trump when he was like,
I
"Yo,
think-
I."
I said I think I used to think I was gay, and he's like, "Oh yeah, homophobes say that all the time." I was like, What?
What?
Trump used to think he was gay, therefore.
and unironically, he was like,
Did that actually
"Oh,
happen?
yeah," and he was like, "Prove to me that you used to be bi-curious."
Prove to
I
me
said,
that you're
"Well,
heterosexual.
Yeah, prove to me that you used to be bi." And
He,
I was like,
flicked his
Do you
arms
do
as
that?
his
Yeah.
supermodel.
and
Did
he
you
was like,
send him a screenshot of you sucking a dick? What the fuck does he
No,
expect?
yeah. I don't know what you want. I literally said, "Well, what would suffice?" And I was like, "Oh, so you don't?" I literally said, "What kind of evidence?" I said, "What would suffice for you as evidence?" Oh, so you don't have evidence then? I was like, "What?" I said, "What would suffice?"
Pleb. Right.
These
I'm gonna
people
read
can't
it,
be
yeah.
reasoned
Like the
with.
one with that, like, you what?
They're too far gone in the tisms.
Yeah, I'll send a link. You can get the thread on screen. Holy shit! It's the.
It's actually got worse since I last seen it.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. Slice, would you be able to window capture Twitter and bring up the Twitter thread, possibly?
If you can get me the link, I can probably get it up there.
I can-
We should also start thinking about maybe wrapping it up because I do need to get going.
yeah.
Yeah, I can't because there are two different threads. One on Bob's original tweet and the one where he quote tweeted me telling me to grow up.
Mhm.
Would we be able to wrap up as soon as we discuss this atrocity?
Yeah.
I have sent the link into the active podcast chat. I need to go and get my charger. I'll be back in 2 seconds, guys.
Shit.
Yeah. You see him quote tweet. It's an honor.
Oops.
What does code tweeting mean?
Can I?
Basically meaning when you
Nope.
like when you like retweet, but like retweet with your own tweet, and with like the tweet link. Quote tweeting.
It's weird.
Yeah. It's,
How
I
do
will never
go?
understand Twitter.
Alright.
Yeah. I mean, I'll never understand the people on Twitter. I'll understand the mechanics. Yeah.
This is why I don't use Twitter.
Yeah.
I only use it to look at like just people I actually like watching. I don't go looking for garbage. Except this one time where me and my
I
friend were
can't find the
in
thread.
science. What?
There was like a very specific. It might be on the original thread. I'll see if I can find it.
So
Just look at
is
your
it at the
tweets and
top
reply.
here or so? Okay, yeah.
Borgie, I want you to go back and ask that guy. Prove to me how you're homosexual, or prove to me how you're heterosexual.
Yeah.
Do it, Borgie. Demonetize the stream.
Is it?
I
Are
think we've
these the
already done
replies
that.
right here, Borgie?
Yeah. It's the guy without the profile picture.
So
wait, is it
Slice,
like way
if
down?
you are,
or what?
I'll send a link to. I'll see where it is.
I might not be able to see it because.
Oh no!
I don't
Okay,
have-
I know why you can't find it. It's because it's on the actual original tweet that I
Oh.
responded to,
Okay.
not the not the
well,
quote tweet.
I can read out. I can read out.
I got
both
it. I
of
got
the-
it. Robert, and he says like the first tweet that Movie Bob posted is proof, when it's not. Like he I don't know how. I think he said like, what was that, Tumblr fan fiction? I think that's his so-called evidence to say why Quatling's homophobic. The issue is, well, people have been calling it a Tumblr fan fiction since the beginning.
Also, can I ask? Like,
Yeah,
Look-
try the link I just sent. That should it should work better.
even
That
if we assume, right? If we assume for the basis of the argument that the quartering are homophobic,
Yeah.
would
Just
you
think-
rather?
is the
would-
quartering the one with Vito?
He's the one who's autism.
Oh, alright.
Do I need to go into the replies of that
Yeah,
particular one?
yeah.
Yeah.
So hon, I just posted it. Use my link because that actually shows the direct reply. So you
Yeah,
can just
so-
scroll up from there.
So I
So
have
can
it
I-
on here.
Can I quickly?
Yeah,
Um,
Robert.
I can only see replies.
Can I also
So-
can I bring up one quick thing just before you continue? Being homophobic is having or showing a dislike or prejudice against homosexual people. Movie Bob condones eugenics, which
Mhm.
allows you to
know what
actively
that is.
Oh
discriminate
no,
and
no. The
potentially
people
kill
are
fucking
unironically
people.
saying is that the tweet of him literally saying he's mad at the Nazis for
ruining
like ruining eugenics is
Quote,
not
What is
pro-
eugenics?
His quote was, "The Nazis ruined eugenics. There is a correct way to do eugenics."
Yeah, and they
The
said
fuck?
that they said that's not pro eugenics.
This-
I don't know what you're talking about. And what is
Basically,
Oh,
Movie Bob
do you
thinks
not know
that there is a
you-
correct way to do
what is that?
eugenics.
No, I don't know anything about that.
So eugenics. So you know the Nazis.
Yeah.
When
am
they
I supposed to-
experimented and
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
they did eugenics.
they
I don't know what that means still.
they also drank water. What are you trying to say?
Okay, I'll post the definition of like eugenics.
Eugenics is, from what I remember, in fact, I see. I quoted
Yeah, it's
it in one of
basically when
my-
you judge people, like basically assume that there's like an inferior and superior people.
Yeah, I can.
Racism?
Yeah, basically. Although,
be more
that-
active,
it's
active
more-
discrimination than racism.
Yeah,
Racism's
it's
just a
more-
prejudice.
for instance, you can like you can be
Eugenics
a
is the actual
eugenicist in the
process.
sense of gender.
Yeah,
Like you can
see,
believe that men are like superior to women or vice versa.
so interesting
But
how
no,
we like
eugenics
came to
eugenics
this.
is more the actual the actual active discrimination.
Yeah,
terms
basically
of,
treating any like group X as superior to group Y.
Yeah,
Where did you
for
post
no
this?
other reason than I suppose for a number of reasons. I suppose it depends on how you qualify it.
Yeah, if you go on the have you got it up?
Where? Oh, where
Slice?
is this?
Robert
I
McCurry.
don't think I can get to it because I don't have a Twitter account, so I don't
Well,
think
I
it's gonna let me.
could just
Yeah.
read it for everyone.
Yeah, just read
sure.
it.
So where do you want me to start from, Borgie? Do you want me to start from the original?
Just
or...
say start with start with my tweet replying to Bob saying I haven't seen She-Ra, I heard it was shit. All I can definitively say is like the art style is garbage.
Here,
But to be honest,
you read your stuff, and I'll read the other people's stuff.
Okay.
How about that?
I haven't seen She-Ra. I heard it was shit. All I can say definitively is that the art style of the show is garbage. But one thing I should say is that I trust the quartering way more than I trust the guy who's pro-eugenics.
So quasi-anime style, or that?
No, one guy, Robert, the guy who's no pro. No, that's the one who called me a homophobe.
Damn it! Wait, so right, okay.
Yeah, there were 9 replies. There were 9 people who replied to me. The guy without the profile picture.
Siding with a total homophobe. Weird flex, but you do you.
Siding with a guy who says shit like this. Weird flex, but okay. And I basically bring up the 2 tweets.
So this is Movie Bob.
Yeah.
The worst thing about viruses is they are really immoral. Sure, it is fun to think about, say, these people and literally all their viewers collapsing into coughing fits on the street. But it might also happen to the 20 to 25% of the country that doesn't deserve to be in pain. The implication being that there's 75 to 80% of the population that deserves to be in pain. I give you Movie Bob.
Nice
Stream has
one,
major
Movie Bob.
lag on it.
The second quote from Bob Chipman was,
Mhm.
"There are days when my fondest wish is that eugenics hadn't been tainted as a science by racists and Nazis. You call them weekdays." So essentially, the implication here is that there is a correct way to do eugenics.
I actually directly say this. Assuming that the quartering is homophobic, which I don't think he is, agreeing with someone on one thing doesn't mean you agree with them on everything.
Assume. Cute. Have fun siding with and being a total homophobe.
But
Evidence of this?
but you're supposed.
Look, we get it. You hate gays. That's why you side with the quartering, who also hates gays.
Frankie, you're supposed to believe all women, didn't you know?
What?
No, this guy's a man. I mean, the guy's name's Robert.
Look, we get it. You hate gays. That's why you side with the quartering, who also hates gays. It's weird that you don't own it, despite being so obvious. Does this guy but right? The Nazis drank water.
Yeah.
I also drink water. Therefore, I am by definition
a Nazi.
a Nazi.
Okay, so
I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this.
No one
There you
wanted
have it.
this. Literally, no
so
one wanted
I
this.
respond with, I don't hate gays. In fact, I used to be bi-curious. I don't think someone who hates gays can relate.
Oh yeah, sure. You used to be bi-curious. Totally not out for hating gays and siding with homophobes. Ha! Got it.
Why would someone hate people be bi-curious? Genuinely. Also, again, evidence, please.
You said used to be bi-curious. That kind of implies that you're not anymore.
I never said I still was. I never said I still was.
I no longer jump off cliffs. I think the implication of what you're saying is that you don't jump off cliffs anymore.
Yeah.
Would that be correct?
Yes.
That would be correct. You fucking retard. Anyway, back to my Robert. It's almost as if you can't keep your story straight and you're an obvious liar.
I don't contradict the story at all in this tweet thread.
Like
I
how you
literally-
don't hate gays.
In
I
his
don't-
opinion,
when do I
you do,
contradict
though,
the story?
so-
Back to you. So, Borgie?
Yes, I used to be. It's basically in response to saying, like him saying, yes, yes, I did used to be bi. That. Oh no, I typo. I'll just say, I'm not going to say it directly, I'll just say what makes sense because I make a typo. Yes, I used to be bi. It was 3 years ago specifically. I thought that I was bi for about a year, but I'm not bi anymore. And I never said I was. Like, I never said I still was. I used to think I was bisexual. Turns out I wasn't. I was just bi-curious. I can tell you the full story if you want.
I thought that said when I was
In
3 years old.
silence.
Oh no, 3 years ago. I was 14.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
but I'm
really?
gonna need to see proof of this.
What
Why?
would suffice? What would be sufficient evidence for you?
Oh, I thought we were doing the thing where you ask for proof with no intent of ever actually listening or acknowledging it and pretending it doesn't exist. I mean, that's what you were doing with when you asked for proof with regarding to the quartering.
I literally
remember?
ask what type of evidence would suffice for you.
Continue.
That's not how that works. You're making a claim about that person being X or not proving he's X. I'm making a confession about my personal life experience, and then I respond, and then underneath that I ask, "Are you okay?"
And people are pointing out the obvious to you, like the quartering being a homophobe, and you're pretending that proof doesn't exist. Again, kind of thought that this would have been obvious. Doesn't look good on you that this joke flew so far over your...
Not a very good joke. If it, I don't say that, but like talking about the tweet, that's not a very good joke.
Is
Okay.
there a joke
It's
in
so
all
good,
of this?
it's not funny.
Yeah, apparently the whole it was a joke, but like what? Dude,
Arguments are a joke.
yeah, dude, I never said that the proof doesn't exist. It might very well exist. I just haven't seen it, which is why I've been asking you to show me the evidence. If I don't know the evidence, I can't know if the evidence exists if I haven't seen it yet.
So should we go through some of the other stuff that was
Sure.
on the thread
Oh, yeah,
of movie bobs?
I should know. He does say, which is all a lie. We established that a while ago. Like, no, you don't send me any evidence. I haven't seen any evidence.
So movie bob quotes your tweet where you say that you would prefer to side with the quartering over movie bob because
Yes.
with the explanation to that being, I would rather side with the quartering, who probably have better takes than somebody who supports eugenics. So movie bob quotes this and says, "Grow up."
Which is
Below that,
interesting.
there was a couple of interesting comments. I
don't
said,
think
what
we
was-
can get through all of this today because I think we
Yeah.
This
get
will be
going.
very, very quick, I promise. Like,
Okay.
genuinely, like, will we wrap up at... What time is it for you at the minute, Slice?
It's like 8 to
Some
5.
dude unironically respond, people love it, die angry about it. Like, what?
What?
We could
Slice,
do a whole.
Slice, what time is it for you?
It's like 8 to 5 here.
Do you
Yeah.
want to finish up at 5 then?
Yeah, sure. We could you could do a whole stream on this whole thing.
We
In
are.
and of
What I'm
itself.
planning is possibly we could do a whole stream on movie bob tweets, which is
Yeah.
just all of the mistakes that this man has made.
Dude. Listen, I know
No, mate. Ray, no, you don't.
Look, you have
You
to
don't-
concede some things for PAFE.
You do not.
How about you give me proof that I don't need brain cells? Why don't you show me your brain cells, huh?
Why don't you show me
You might
why
die
don't you
if
show
you
me
do
proof
that.
that you don't need brain cells?
That's what I'm asking him.
Well, I'm asking you to do it to me.
Why?
Why not?
That's not my claim.
Alrighty, well,
I just
final
love.
final thoughts
Oh,
on
so,
things.
I've actually I lost. I don't know.
I mean, we could
my-
possibly do a response to a movie Bob video and talk about some tweets beforehand.
I thought Small Size said he had to go. Like,
We are gonna let him
I-
go in like 2 seconds.
Okay.
I need to. Where was it? I can't find where I was questioning certain things.
What was wrong with what Bulky said, unironically asking here?
To which nobody responded.
Oh, there you go. Do you also respond to Samuel Watkins?
And what did I say?
So what happens if Movie Bob has a bad take? Should we critique him? He's not infallible. The
He's
guy
not
is
infallible. Yeah.
Yeah. The guy is unironically in favor of eugenics. We are entitled to have an opinion on his opinion as much as he is entitled to his own opinion, however inhumane his opinion may be.
So,
Oh yeah, because he was responding to like, oh, Bob's bringing attention to terrible people and he's talking about me.
and then somebody says, so somebody said, better this person, referring to you, better this person harass Bob over She-Ra than taking his BS to like some young fan of the show or other groups of people who already deal with lots of prejudice on a daily basis. If that's Bob's intention, then that's some heroic self-sacrifice and shit. To which I replied,
I
to,
literally like yesterday. So she just a weird coincidence. Literally yesterday, two of my friends, Millie and Sophia, were literally talking about how She-Ra's ending is garbage, and I was like, what? That's weird.
Yeah, people
I've
have been
not
talking
seen
about
it,
the thing of how they're happy the show is finally over.
To which I responded
no,
to
they
the
said
person.
the show was really good until the ending. I was like, oh.
So the person that said that Bob was self-sacrificing, I replied, self-sacrificing. This description used to describe a man who genuinely believes there is a correct way to exclude people in society if they are judged to be inferior, and to promote people who they believe to be
Also,
superior.
I love how they say I harass Movie Bob. It's literally one tweet reply.
My comment below that was the only thing about Movie Bob that is superior is his appetite. And then somebody,
about, dude, 5,000 calories worth of McDonald's are a small snack.
Yeah.
and then the same thing, does he still think that way though? Also, bruh.
He's never disavowed it, to my knowledge.
To which I replied, even if we assume that's true, hey, Hitler changed his mind at the end. He didn't support mass genocide at the end. Must be a top bloke. Point being that the very fact that he held the opinion in the first place is most likely, and he most likely still does, is a massive stain upon anything else that comes out of his food hole.
I mean, I wouldn't agree with that, but like, I would more reference how his current tweets aren't much better.
Is this stream still going? Because I think we should clarify that we don't think that Movie Bob is as bad as Hitler.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, don't go harassing people, please.
Look,
yeah, but he claims I am harassing him. I'm not. It's one.
Yeah, no.
I think Movie Bob has bad takes.
For our audience,
I'm not going to say he's a bad person. I
Yeah.
think he is very misguided and quite an ignorant man.
Yeah, and other stories of people fucking falsely calling me a homophobe. Someone in my filmmaking chat. So can I tell you what I said that got me labeled a? So if you really think about it, Group is the textbook definition of a faggot.
Because it's a bundle of sticks.
Yeah.
Get it?
I was recently re-added to the chat and saw the conversation that happened after. I was basically, the guy kicked me not because he like disagreed with me. He agreed with my point. It's just that the people like going after me wouldn't shut the fuck up. So they just like kicked me to like to calm. Yeah, it's just damage control.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, and unironically, one guy, a mate of mine, In fact, it's actually the guy I recently added, Harry, who said he'd be interested on coming on this stream. Said that, he basically said that what happened. I think it was him who said it. Basically saying what he said was not that big a deal. There's no need to react that massively to it. And he compared that to I think it was some dude ignoring the Nazis invading Poland. That's remotely comparable.
I have several questions.
I'll send the Instagram. I have a screenshot of the Instagram post. It's the most insane thing.
Stuff.
Yeah.
PAFE is PC now.
All right. On that
are we
happy
gonna wrap
note,
it up on that?
we should
we
should
got,
probably end the stream.
Okay, we
there.
can elaborate on this next stream.
Yeah. Sounds
stream.
really interesting though. Sounds crazy.
Yes, it is very interesting.
Slice, you're selling it. Come on, keep going.
I'm
Sounds
so
really
I'm
interesting. A little bit like our sponsor,
Raid
Shadow.
Alright.
Yeah, well, if that's everything,
Legends.
Any
Oh, God.
final statements or tisms that you want to get out?
Movie Bob should come on the podcast.
No, not really.
Discuss
No.
his what he believes is good eugenics.
All I'll say is that to quote the great the great Mun himself, no bullshit. Debates are gay. Debates are the
That's a good
yeah.
quote.
Debates are homosexual.
Good,
Is
good
it an
quote.
objective gay or a subjective gay?
Is it objectively homosexual? Nothing
Next.
is objective.
This weekend, we're going to be looking at some traditional homosexual tactics
Oh,
from
God.
the Remarkable
Oh
Republican.
boy.
Tune in at the
Oh,
weekend
yes.
for that
Agreed.
lovely content. Adios, guys.
Goodbye, boys.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you everyone.
See you guys.
Goodbye. Yeah. Thank you, Josh and Morgie and Theory and everyone. A really
Thank you,
interesting
Slice.
conversation. I know we don't probably agree on everything. But
And I'm sure that we could probably. I would very much like to discuss this in future because I feel like we're all kind of in the stage where we're trying to figure stuff out for each other, for
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think
we're not
we kinda
we don't know the answers any more than anybody else knows the answers. We're just kind of it's a discussion more than an objective conclusion on it because I don't think you can make objective conclusions on the things that we're referring to. 'Cause they are
Yeah,
they're
yeah, I mean,
so
a lot
complex.
of
There's so many
tricky.
things we have to
Very-
consider.
It
Yeah.
is extremely confusing.
And I mean, I said
Mhm.
this to Josh a couple of days ago, I think it was. But I'd like to kind of reiterate it to all you guys. Like me, because I did say I was a Christian, right? So I don't
Mhm.
want you guys to feel like I'm pushing anything on you. Because I
no,
believe
You're entitled to
that.
your opinion.
You're not
You're
doing
entitled
that.
to your opinion as much as
Yeah,
we're
no, it's
entitled
cool,
to our
man.
opinion.
But so
So if
basically,
you if
the
you
thing
bring up an
is though,
example,
I don't believe that I can force you or anyone else to convert or whatever, to start following Jesus.
if you
Like,
had
that's
proof,
not why I'm here. That's not my
if
job.
you had proof, you
so...
could.
Sorry?
If you had proof, you could.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's
And that's a topic for another day, guys.
that's a hard question. But yeah, basically, I don't want to. I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to push something. So that's kind of my stance. Because like Josh said, I'm figuring lots of stuff out as well. So we're all in this together.
I think
Yes.
the average age of this call is probably
19 maybe.
maybe lower than that.
Yeah, 18, 19.
What?
So
Well, how old are you guys?
Kinda,
I'm 21.
You're 30.
No,
He's
I'm
15.
not 30, I'm 15.
I can't hit. You're cutting out as soon as you're saying your
15.
age.
15.
15.
Yes.
Ah, okay. All right. Oh, you're younger than me. Okay, I'm 17.
I figured when you said 3 years ago, I was 14.
So the average
can I-
age of
wait a sec.
this call currently is 17.75. So, you know, we're all young men. We're all
yeah.
figuring stuff out for ourselves, and I am completely of the impression that throughout this journey of creating PAFE, we're all gonna get a hell of a lot
Mhm.
better at this, and we're all gonna grow. And like,
Yeah. Hold on, my connection is ridiculously low. Like it's 1 bar, so I'm having trouble hearing you guys.
Man.
just infer what we're saying.
Hold on, let me move my computer to a different location. See if that works a bit better.
But to clarify, like PF isn't.
Okay.
We're not gonna be perfect. We'll never be perfect, but we're gonna get a hell of a lot better, hopefully, as time goes on. And
Hopefully.
if anybody
That's
does
the
listen
plan.
to this,
Yeah. Okay. I just moved my computer. The connection is slightly better. Okay. Now
Hey.
it's back to.
Yeah, you sound a lot better. Wow.
Yeah.
but if anybody
Yeah.
listens to this and thinks, you know, we have problems
I'll
with our points and
probably
so forth,
leave my. There we go. It's now full bars.
magic.
Hold on, let me turn up the performance. Maybe that will work.
It's the Tism gods, man. It's the Tism gods.
Did you just call God autism? It's not very Christian of you now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess
My
in
Christian page
you
server.
could call him the
Oh.
the greatest Tism.
I'll probably leave the call and let you guys chat. I'll see you guys.
All right, Borgie.
Thank
Adios.
you. Goodbye. Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Adios.
Guys, we're gonna call you the Christian. The Christian PAFE.
What?
We're gonna call you the Christian PAFE.
The Christian cream.
Christian cream.
The Christian slice.
Come get your Christian cream here.
Come get the small slice of a Christian. They taste great. So also next week, we are potentially planning 2 gaming PAFEs for anybody that listens. Not that anybody will listen, but you know, just you know.
Cool.
Read out all the super chats.
I'll
And
check.
that's us.
No, there's no super chats. Does anyone have any like channels or anything they wanna
Plug? Nope.
talk
I'm grand.
about?
No. Oh, I
Cryo?
have a Discord server now that people can join. I guess it's called RP with friends.
If
Cool.
you send the link to either me or Slice, we can add the link into the description and post if you want.
How do I do that?
You send us an invite, I suppose.
You're already on it.
You could send an invite in the chat, and then we could like it, and then
alright. Let me do that then.
in the chat of the video.
Mm-hmm.
Alright.
I believe,
Is that everything, guys?
I believe I'm going to try and start doing some streams on my personal channel. Try and get that up and running because there is some stuff that I want to do outside of this.
Nice. What is that personal channel called?
It's called MBX Brick because.
I really didn't
I
expect that.
actually that channel's legitimately recommended to me. Like that's not
Seriously?
a joke.
My channel
Yes,
is
it was actually
recommended to you?
recommended. Yes.
My
Wow.
God!
That's crazy.
Wow!
That's actually
Or
like
either
that's
that or I
so
saw you in
crazy.
the comment
Actually,
section of a video. I don't know.
small world, eh?
No.
You ever gonna
actually,
call it
it's
Small
quite large.
Slice?
I did make one, but it. So basically, I got Streamlabs OBS, and something happened to it, and now it's linked to my primary account, which is MBX Brick, and it won't let me change that. So I'll just have to stream to there, which is fine. Like
Fair enough.
I can repurpose it. But yeah. So if any of you are
I think
interested
that's us.
in anything that I'll be doing there, just give me a shout and we can do something over there. And yeah.
All right. Nice.
All
Is
right.
that everything, guys?
I think that's
Yeah.
everything. 7
For the
past
17th
5.
time. Bye, guys.
Goodbye. Thank you
Bye,
for tuning in
everybody
to
who might
PAFE.
watch this one day.
Sorry.
The best content for no content.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's us.
Such a weird tagline.
I don't even understand that bit.
Yeah. Okay.
I just
Anyways,
made it- I
thank
literally
you,
just
thank
made
you,
it up
chat.
for no
And yeah, have a wonderful day.
Slice.
What?
Slice.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like an old dog and the dog is like, it's a husk of its former self, and you need to like put a bullet in the head and let old Scruffy, lay to rest. That's what you need to do to this discussion. Just end it.
Like all my dogs have
just end it.
Have just died from like, cars hitting them or whatever.
Just natural causes,
What is wrong with your,
Yeah.
like, luck?
All right.
That's
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and we will catch you